always used to lay you clean up the messes. Down on my knees, thought I couldn't stand up on my own. Turns out sometimes you're stronger alone.
Hey, Mike Shimwell here, host of the Shunned podcast. If you want to tell your story, buy a t-shirt, maybe some merch, maybe get some additional resources, you can do so at shunnedpodcast.com. If you want professional help to heal and recover from life in a cult so that you can figure out who you are and what you want out of this life, or maybe you just want to figure out where the patterns from the past might still be showing up in your life today, you can find help at exjwhelp.com. Again, that's exjwhelp.com. And every episode of the Shun podcast has helpful links in the podcast and YouTube descriptions. So if you need something, you can always look there. And now let's meet our guest.
My name is Tana, 42 years old. I was a Jehovah's Witness and shunned.
All right, Tana. So how did you come to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses in the first place?
Lucky me, I was born in. No choices there. Just, it is what it is.
Understood, like many others. So do you
Right.
know how it came to be part of your family? Do you know how many generations it goes back or how it started?
Yeah, just my mom opened the door. She was living away from her family, actually in Denver. And again, we're from South Dakota. She was living away from her family. My dad is a hard person. To be, he just, and I think he was a lot harder back then. I know there was alcohol, some drug stuff. And I think she was in a vulnerable place and opened the door and wanted something better for her young kids. She had my brother and I think my sister at the time. Very young kids. She was pretty young. And then also her grandmother, who she was really close to, was getting very old, very bad arthritis, getting, towards the end of life. And I think it was scaring her. So actually, I even just forgot about this. My great grandmother, my mom brought her into the truth. A few years after she started studying or got baptized. I don't know, this is before I was born, but a few years before or after she started studying, or right around when she got baptized, she brought my great grandmother into it shortly before she died.
Wow.
Which is what I think got the hook in my mom a little bit too,
Well, sure, because she wanted to see her in the resurrection,
Yeah,
right?
Yep.
Yeah. So your mom, you said she had two kids at the time. So she's was she married or?
Yes. Yeah.
So she was
She at least had
married.
one kid, one or and one on the way or something like that. And then, only married for a few years at that point. Married
And
young hippies in the 70s.
okay, and he was clearly struggling with alcohol, potentially drugs, whatever the case may be at the time. So yeah, she was likely looking for something, and Jehovah's Witnesses, they're always out there. So by law of averages, eventually, statistically, they're going to hit somebody right at just the right time where that person is looking and going to be vulnerable. And so,
Right. And if I had to guess, I'd say it was like maybe right around 74-ish, like 74, 75 time frame. So I think that might have, got her too. A little bit.
Interesting. So for those who are listening for the first time and were never Jehovah's Witnesses, Jehovah's Witnesses had predicted the end of the world in 1975 and put a lot of pressure on people to join because here we are, the world's gonna end here in 75, we're gonna walk into this utopia thereafter, so come join us. And so I can see why that would be a very interesting and hopeful message, maybe to somebody whose life at the time isn't the happiest on the day to day because of various circumstances. So you then are born into this thing. It's all you ever knew growing up. So what did it mean to you? What was the worldview? How did it make you see yourself and the people around you?
I was scared all the time. I was terrified. I was scared of my friends dying. All these people that I met at school that were just nice. They were, I'm told they're going to die. My dad was not a Jehovah's Witness. So that's for him too. Like, it just was like, I never understood how that could be normal, or I just was like, what? It just made no sense to me. But I was really scared. I was always scared of storms and sleeping. I never slept. My mom wondered why I was up until 2 o'clock in the morning every day. Well, I'm terrified. And every time I go to sleep, I have nightmares. So I don't want to go to sleep. So I mean, for years, I didn't sleep well at all and was always having nightmares. And so I was scared to go to sleep. I think I probably could have slept, but I was scared to go to sleep, to have the nightmares. And so, yeah, it was
You
fun.
know, you may not know this. Obviously, in my coaching practice, we talk about all types of things, and I just want you to know that that is actually fairly common for people to have sleep disruptions because of not just the fear, but if you remember, there was that scripture, like Jehovah's going to come like a thief in the night, or
Sleep
the
in the
end's
night.
going to
Yeah.
come. So the opposite side of that hopeful message of utopia is the destruction that precedes it,
Yeah.
Armageddon. And so pumping kids' heads full of fear that you're going to be asleep and like a thief in the night, Jehovah's going to destroy the whole world. That's
Yeah.
terrifying. And a lot of people had a hard time sleeping.
Yeah. The Revelation book also did not help anything. How many times did we have to go through that? Like, it was our afternoon, because we went to afternoon book study or whatever. So yeah, for like, I swear it was years. It was like 3 years. I feel like we studied that book every Monday afternoon or whatever, and it was creepy and scary. But yet Rainbow Bright and her unicorn are bad. But here's this flying horse killing, I don't know, just with a scary angel, devil. What is that? I don't know.
Those
Yeah, it was
pictures are
just
so creepy.
weird.
uh, Yeah, so it is funny, the hypocrisy there. Rainbow Bright is
Yeah,
awful and to be
on her
avoided, but
uniform.
here are
Yeah,
some locusts with, I don't know, many eyes or heads, and what I can't even remember all
right.
of it now. The dragons and the harlots and all of
Yeah.
that stuff.
I
Yes.
actually, since like listening to all of your podcasts and binging Shunned, I've been like, I need to go. But next time I ever am in that town, like I need to find some of that stuff. I still see my dad, so I'm like, I need to get my old books just to look at them. I just want to know what I even wrote in the sides, because like I remember I was always doodling, I was always bored. And so I wonder, like, I just have like, I want to look at those crazy weird books, or the Bible story book I looked at recently, and I was like, okay, so in the first like 10 pages, there's like 3 illustrated murders. I'm like, look at all
Oh,
the
good
blood.
observation. I wasn't,
Yeah. And
and
I'm
I
like,
know there's a
what's
lot of
this?
violence in there, but just paring it down to that in the first 10 pages, there's three murders.
Illustrated
Wow.
murders with the blood and everything. And I'm like, wow, yeah, I guess I could have been, those were like the stories we read before bed.
Yeah.
So that
Any
might have,
wonder you might not be able to sleep
I
as a
know,
kid, you know?
weird, right?
Yeah. Um, so obviously fear pervaded, and certainly being in what witnesses would call a divided household where your dad wasn't a witness and your mom was, then you're worried about what's going to happen to dad, right? That's got to be tough to deal with when you're a little kid.
Right.
Um, So let's talk then about some of the different circumstances of life. We just talked about, so you did have this divided household, so to speak. What was life like at home growing up? What was the temperature of the room?
Scary. Really just we were always scared as kids. The alcohol was a problem in the house. And so we never knew coming home from meeting at 9:30 at night or whatever. We never knew how drunk, how angry, how anything could set him off. And so there was a lot of fighting in my house between my mom and dad. So that was another thing. At night, we heard that all the time. I remember my brother calling the police, which we didn't do, right? We never did that. But one time we did. And my brother, I think, was like maybe 3, and he called the police. I mean, that's kind of how terrifying it was. We were little kids scared in our room of fighting and breaking things and yeah, just yelling. There was racism in the house too. So um, let's say someone, he comes home after drinking and Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is on the TV or something. And then that could start something for another. And it was like one little thing, and it was like, boom. Okay, now it's a huge fight, screaming for an hour, or for then I just a lot of times I would just fall asleep to screaming, like just eventually just pass out to the yelling, and then in the morning, okay, go to school, like time to get up and go to school and be the weirdo. Like there's always that too, fun. But my friends at school were actually nicer. I mean, they treated me really pretty decent. They definitely thought it was weird that I had to go color or go read every time something was going on at school or whatever. But
You mean
school
like
was
holiday parties
sort of
and
an
such?
escape. What's that?
You mean like holiday parties and such?
Yeah, Valentine's, holiday parties, birthdays. Like there's Tana with a book out in the hallway, like, um, which I'm glad I read so much. I think that actually was good, but it didn't feel good, right? Like sitting out in the hallway by yourself, right? So
Yeah, always alone. So at home you've got this, well, the fear as the overarching feeling coming from the doctrine of Jehovah's Witnesses and fear of Armageddon and such, and then you're coming home from those meetings. We'll talk about what the Kingdom Hall is like in a minute, but you're coming home from those meetings, and then it's fear of, well, I guess what's going to upset dad or what's going to
yeah,
set dad off.
right.
That's
Constantly
tough.
walking on eggshells as a child. I remember my little brother as a toddler not wanting to make dad mad. Like we were kids, we were little. And but then yeah, also being really good at the meetings and not wanting to get in trouble there either. Go to the back room or whatever. So yeah,
Well, yeah, it's really why so many ex-Jehovah's Witnesses battle with perfectionism, because we had to learn to try to be perfect, to never and to try to anticipate everyone's mood and everyone's
emotions. Yeah,
move so that we never got in any trouble, always trying to be hyper vigilant about what we were doing, what we were saying, how we were
yeah.
appearing. Just it's so exhausting to live that life.
Especially as a kid, I never realized now that I'm a lot older and I have kids. My youngest is 18 now, but kids shouldn't not have to navigate adults' emotions. And I think that that's what I felt like we had to do. We were always like, what's going on in the room? Okay, let's not make him mad. Let's not do this. Like we were always navigating adults' emotions, and I don't feel like that was fair, but you know,
Well, no, not really. But a lot of adults are just big kids, right?
right,
You see them throw tantrums just like children. It is what it is. But a lot of people haven't been exposed to very healthy tools, and uh,
right.
they haven't
And
grown up in their
from
own.
what I hear, I mean, my dad's home life when he was a kid sounds like it was even probably worse than mine as far as his dad and his parents and the alcoholism and all the things. I I don't blame him, but I feel like, yeah, I feel like he had grown up hard, which translated into us growing up a little hard, you know?
Well, he comes by it honestly, but it doesn't make abuse okay.
Right.
And
True.
so it's trying to hold both the compassion for him and where he comes from, but also compassion for yourself and your own and what you've gone through, and that it's not okay for you and your siblings to have been treated that way, or your mom. Um, it's really tough. So you're a kid trying to hold a lot of big things that really are too big for a child to hold. You shouldn't have to hold all of that. So home, uh, what at home, because you had this divided household, did being witnesses cause a rift or a divide
Yeah.
between your mom and your dad, or you kids and your dad?
Yeah. I think, we had to devote so much time to it. It's what, about 10 hours a week, pretty close. Um, which I think he didn't appreciate my mom spending that much time on it. She owned a business plus worked 6 days a week. And then he was an iron worker and he was, working 5, 6 days a week, sometimes out of town. And, then he'd come home and, oh, we got to go to the meeting. Oh, we have another meeting. Oh, this or that, or we're studying for the meeting. So I think he didn't love how much time she devoted to it for sure. So I think there was some stuff there. And then I know my older brother was good at sports, and my dad loved that and sports and dude stuff and whatever. And so I know that there was a little bit of fighting there with that. I know my brother did do some sports, but he was the only one that got that. I think it caused so much fighting and so much between them two. Maybe that's why we didn't push it too. We just knew we couldn't, and also big fights. And was it worth all that to play volleyball or to, you know what I mean? I wanted to do those things, but you know, I also knew that my mom wasn't going to really she wouldn't want me to do it. That only my dad might, and I was a girl, so he might not. So he might not fight for me like my brother. So I just like, okay, well, none of that. We won't do after school things. So
Gotcha. Uh, did you find that did your dad want to do things like holidays and such? Those are
no, that is the
no.
one thing that I think he liked about Jehovah's Witnesses, because I think he was like, sweet, any of this. I don't I don't have to go shopping. I can be cheap with this. Like, I don't have to do any of this. The only thing that he did do is after Christmas, his friend worked at this shoe store. So after Christmas, like a couple days after Christmas, like that weekend or whatever, he would take us to go get brand new shoes. So that was cool. Like, at least I could go back to school with something new, right? So that was cool. He would take us and do that. But other than that, yeah, I don't think he really cared so much about holidays. I guess he does Halloween now. I remember, but I think back then he was like probably at the bar during Halloween, and we were hiding in the dark. But I guess he does hand out Halloween candy now. So but that's about it.
So obviously it wasn't the happiest home. There was a lot going on there. Were there specific things that maybe you guys did that were fun together? Did you guys ever go on vacations or have a game night, or
Not a
were there
lot of
times
vacations.
in the chaos where everybody came together?
Yeah. So we lived in the Black Hills of South Dakota, a very pretty place. Water skiing, going on the boat, things like that. Um, my brother and sister are amazing at water skiing. My dad was like, really wanted us to do all of that. Um, but it came to me and I'm like, okay, I'll try it. But he used to get mad at that too. So like it'd be fun. We'd be having fun on the boat. And then my brother would mess up or something. And, oh, what are you doing? But, It was kind of a thing too. But my brother and sister got really good. I mean, they were really good at water skiing, and we had so much fun. Then it was about my time to start learning. I remember I was like, okay, I'm doing it. Okay, cool. I'm doing it. And then I hit the water so hard, and it felt like I hit concrete with my face. And he got so mad at me because I was like, no, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. Like, and plus I knew, like, I had always watched him, like, getting mad at my brother and sister if they made a mistake or something. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. And he was so mad at me. And I was like, well, I can deal with him being mad at me for not doing this, or I can try to learn and he'll be mad at me like once a week for the like, so I'm like, nah, he can just be mad at me for not doing it. So I know he was really mad at me. Like, I used to be the one that would like say stuff to him. I know everybody else was scared, and I was too, but I would be the one that would call something out or tell him to stop or say something sometimes, or be like, no, I'm just not doing it. I don't want to. And he couldn't handle that very well. But I think he actually kind of grew to respect me in that I would stand up for myself. So our relationship got better, much better over the years. We have a better relationship than he does with any of my other brothers and sisters, which also I'm not in the religion, so it might be that too. Partially.
Well, I'm sure that attitude or that part of your personality where you were able to speak up for yourself probably would bode well for you in certain areas of your life as we go throughout your story. So you and I wanted to ask that about some of the good times, because I think it's important to acknowledge that not just that there were good times, but this is what makes it all so confusing at times. And it's part of, really just even part of abuse in general, is abusive people aren't abusive all the time. Part of what
Right.
makes it confusing is the person who's loving and nurturing today is screaming and in your face tomorrow. And that's part of it. And so it's important to acknowledge those things. And it's also just important to acknowledge that there were good times, and those
Yeah.
times were real too.
Yeah. I
From
mean,
the
loved going to
past.
the lake. We went camping a lot, fishing.
Mhm.
He, showed us how to do that. He hunted. I did not. But my brothers did do that with him. Um, I helped in my own way. I did the shotgun reloading. I would make shotgun shells for him I was even thinking that. I was like 8 years old making shotgun shells. Like, I don't know. I was good at it and I liked it and it was kind of cool and it was helping. Like, I was helping. So, and he was always really nice to me and showing me how to do that, like, okay, you do this and you do that. And, showing me how to work the machine, which was dangerous, but, whatever. But yeah, we did that. I mean, there was definitely good times as a kid for sure. There's a lot of stress, but there was definitely good times. One thing too,
Um,
I want to say, have to say this. I think in school, because we went kind of going back to school, I was in tag, which was like a accelerated kind of program. And I had this teacher, Jerry Renner, and she was awesome. And she taught me from like, I don't know when I got in tag, maybe like second grade, probably right around that time. So very young. She introduced us to different cultures, different art, different religions, a little like as far as when we talk about culture, she would briefly bring in religion. It wasn't a religious class or anything like that. But she just showed us so many different things and took us to different artists' houses and just all these different things and had us research different projects. And this is from pretty young. And she always taught us to question things. If somebody tells you something, you ask why. Or if you don't understand or you don't agree, find out things from a different perspective, bring your perspective in, but constantly question things. And now I'm like, did she know about me? Like, was she like, I don't know if she realized how culty it was. Like, I don't know. I don't know if she realized that at all. She never pushed me like with anything with my religion, but she would always ask me, well, why? Like if I said something, she would always say, but why is that? Why do you think they do that? Why do you think this is? And I really think that she helped me be like, well, that doesn't make sense. Instead, like just going to the hall and being like, well, this doesn't feel very loving. You're saying it's loving, but are we, And just always kind of questioning things. So I thank you, Mrs. Renner. I appreciate what you did for me, even if you didn't know.
Well, yeah, certainly it sounds like she was teaching you all how to think, not what to think, and
Right.
that's a valuable a valuable tool to have and to learn in school, no matter what it is that your station is in life, or whether you're in growing up in a cult unknowingly, or talking politics, or anything else.
Yeah,
It's good to learn to think for yourself and to question.
absolutely. And it was a really small class. There was only like 6 or 8 of us in
Wow.
that particular class, and we'd get pulled away from the normal class. So like there's normal math going on, they'd pull us away for a couple hours and we would do other stuff and then they'd put us back in with the class. But so it was like a small atmosphere, and we would all like kind of bounce stuff off each other too. It'd be like group talking and stuff like that. And I just think that, man, I think she helped me with my critical thinking skills. But I didn't know that at the time, but I can see it now.
Yeah, and I can see how that would pay off. You briefly mentioned at the Kingdom Hall, you were kind of noticing like, well, this isn't the loving place that they say it is. So what was your life like as a young witness in the Kingdom Hall? Was it something that you gravitated toward at all, or no?
Um, I did not like going to meetings. I thought it was super boring. I liked the social aspect a little bit, but mostly not because I did have an unbelieving father, right? So you get treated different by the elders' kids, or the ones that they look at you as like a charity case almost, and also bad association. So like limited playtime. I'm like, I'm 10 years old. Like I could tell that their moms and dads, it was different if they would ask if, well, can Tana come over? And they'd look at each other. You could just see like, dude, I didn't do I was a really good kid. I mean, I was a total nerd too. Like I didn't do anything wrong. I never wanted to get, when I was young, I never wanted to get in trouble with my dad, with my mom, at school, nothing. So yeah, then them acting like I was like, I could just tell when they would ask, like, this girl would be like, Mom, can Tana come over? And I would see her mom look at her dad and the elder and the pioneer and see their little eye exchange, and then be like, yeah, I mean, it'd be okay for a while, blah, 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 or something. Like, you could just tell that it was like, but then there was a couple other girls in the congregation. Actually, I think one of them was in a different congregation, but because we were like the sort of outcasts with a worldly father, our moms got us together sometimes. So that was kind of nice, actually, those girls. Because then see, I met their dads. I wasn't scared of their dads at their houses, and anybody, if they came over to my house, they were instantly didn't want to, see my dad or talk to my dad, because he was the devil. But, to them, they're like, oh, he's worldly, he's bad, really bad. And so, but yeah, I met their dads and they were really nice. Like my friends' worldly dads were pretty cool. And one taught us how to tie flies for like fishing flies. And I thought that was cool. And just, they were nice. And so, again, the view of all the worldly people are so bad, but I'm like, I don't think so. They seem pretty okay. Like, and the same with kids at school, they're telling you worldly kids are bad. You can't hang out with worldly kids. And I'm like, well, their house seems better than ours as far as like family stuff. And, like, well, this doesn't, I don't know. It just never, nothing ever came together as far as like making sense. It just didn't make sense.
So it sounds like you really observed the differences in the way people acted and the way
Versus
people
what they
made
would
you
say.
feel.
Yeah, they would say how loving everything was, but
Right.
then it didn't feel like that really. And then even then, there was an elder's family that we went to, and there was the mom was a babysitter. She owned a daycare, so there was one point where we had to go there for daycare. But also, I kind of became close to one of their daughters, and but so I was there a lot because I was there for getting babysat, and then I was there, hanging out with my friend. And this was an elder. I can't remember if she was a pioneer, but an elder, this high up elder, everyone looked up to. But at their house, they got along well and their family seemed good and all that. But again, with racist jokes and things. And I'm like, that's not right. Like, especially, so then it's like, okay, so I hear it from worldly people, right? South Dakota is pretty racist, to be honest. It is. But I hear it from worldly people. And I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense and that's bad. Oh, also I had a black grandpa. That's my grandmother married a black man after her husband died, or they got a divorce or something. I don't remember. He died before I was ever born. So the only grandpa I knew was black, and he was awesome. He was fun. He was nice. He let me drive his Corvette when I was like 16 years old. Like, he was really cool. Like, he was super nice and treated me well all the time. So racism never made sense to me. And then when you hear worldly people saying stuff that's racist, it's like, okay, well, maybe it's because they're worldly, right? Maybe it's because they're bad. But then wait a minute. You're this like super elder and you're saying racist stuff and making jokes about it in front of your kids. Me, I'm not even your kid. And you're making jokes like this. And I'm like, this doesn't feel right either. Like, it just, again, say one thing, say we're so loving, but then I can see that that's not loving,
Mhm.
So it was just so contradictions in my head all the time with all of it.
Well, yeah, Jehovah's Witnesses set themselves up as though they're above worldly people. They're
Right.
a cut above. There's so much holier, so much better. And then you see that at the end of the day, they're just people. And some of them are going to be racist, just like some people are going to be racist. And
Yeah.
out in the world as well. And you see they're probably a reflection of the environment. Maybe it was there in South Dakota or whatever, and it's just there's a lot of ignorance there, and it's really sad.
It is. It is.
Yeah,
And I
and
just
it
need
hurts a lot of
everybody.
people that don't need to be hurt. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
um it's awful, but
And you tell me that Jehovah created all these people.
yeah.
And what's wrong with that? What? That doesn't make sense either. Like, okay, again, why are they bad? Or worldly people even bad, but Jehovah created everybody. Like, it just made no sense to me that we're these perfect people, this chosen group. And I know I heard somebody say on your podcast, you like look around like you know all like this is the chosen group. Like, I'm
Actually, I
sorry,
think
but
that was
really?
me. I
So yeah, it's
remember
kind of yeah.
looking around and saying, these are the people that found the truth. Like, of
Like
all
it?
the people on earth, this
Right.
group of people who seem very maladjusted, maladaptive, their lives are kind of a mess. They're not doing well in a lot of ways,
Right.
but they've all got the
They're the
truth.
ones that got the answer though, right? And
They
yeah,
figured it out somehow.
none of it
How is
made
that?
sense. What's that?
Yeah, it's like they figured it out somehow. How in the world is it that these are the people that figured out what was right when they can't seem to do that in any other area of their life?
Right. And then like the lack of education post high school or even really
Mhm.
school in general because so many people were homeschooled. I was like, all like it just didn't. It seems like the people that would have the answer would probably also be a little more educated too. I don't know. That's what I
One
thought.
might imagine.
Yeah.
Yes. Um, would you like to see opportunities for people that have been victims of financial control? Really like all of us that left a cult that have been discouraged from education, ambition, and financial literacy. Would you like to see those individuals have resources available to get help? Wouldn't it be nice to see job opportunities available for ex-Jehovah's Witnesses who have been isolated from even knowing what those opportunities might be? Do you have a small business, but maybe you don't know how to market it or put it in front of the right people? Or maybe you have a hard time selling what you have or what you do because you've been told your whole life that you're not good enough. Are you struggling because you have no network to work within and so your opportunities are very limited? What if you had access to help you to actually manage the money you made so that you kept more of it and maybe had some chance at actually retiring with dignity someday? If these things sound good to you, I'm looking for people that are looking for such opportunities. I'm looking for people in the community that are recruiters, marketing professionals, employers, and those who want to be helped in these areas. And if you're not in the community and you listen to this and you're like, "Hey, I have a business and I think I could help in some way," feel free to reach out. Please go to exjwhelp.com, again, exjwhelp.com, or I'm calling this the Uprising Project. So you can also go to theuprisingproject.com for more information and to apply to be included in some exciting new opportunities that I'm working very hard to bring into the community. Together, we can all rise up. So you're clearly not vibing with the, I guess, the attitudes of the people, and you're watching their behavior. Were you mentioned the fear earlier, were you vibing at all with the doctrine? Did you believe in Jehovah and Jesus? Did you really feel like you had a connection there or anything that you wanted to
No
like go
connection.
tell people about?
No connection.
Okay.
No connection whatsoever. I wanted to believe in the resurrection, right? I wanted to believe that. It sounds great.
Sure.
I wanted to see my great grandma again. She babysat us. That's the only reason we had to go to the elder's wife, is because my great grandma died. So we had to go to a different babysitter, but she babysat us, until I was about 5 years old. So kind, so nice. And she was a witness. So, and I wanted to see her again. So I wanted to believe in the resurrection. Did I? I don't know. The whole thing with tigers and stuff again. I was like, really? I didn't know that that's possible. I mean, I guess if it's God, it's possible, but I was always a brain. So science brain said tigers eat meat. And it just was like, I don't know. I don't know. It'd be great. That'd be so cool. I remember like drawing pictures as a kid of, you know, pandas or tigers, whatever. Did I believe that though? I gotta say barely. A little bit, but I think I always had it in the back of my head. And maybe it's right. I always thought maybe it was right until honestly, till not even that long ago. I'm like, well, maybe they're right. It's a little extreme. But maybe, but no, I don't think I ever really super connected with it or really believed it a lot.
Well, sure. I mean,
I wanted
to
to.
go on social media, and if people had an opportunity to go play with tigers, they'd be like, they jump at it, right? Like, ooh, I can
Yeah,
play with tigers, and I know they won't. If I knew they wouldn't hurt me,
right,
right? That
right,
sounds awesome. The world's biggest kitty cat,
right,
to
right.
pet and play with. But Jehovah's Witnesses have created this utopia where you're going to be live in a paradise, like the Garden of Eden, and play with lions and tigers and bears. Oh my! And it's just, it sounds fun when you're a kid, and as an adult, I guess it could sound fun, but it's just so absence of a reality check as to what, I mean, why do these animals eat meat? Look at their teeth, I
Right.
am meat.
Right. We did a lot of, I did, my one teacher, that tag teacher, we did stuff on we had to pick exotic animals and sports and do the stuff about it. That was one year we had to do that. And I'm just like, man, no, I did way too much research on polar bears, and they're gonna eat you. Like, I don't know, but I think they might eat you.
So you didn't connect with the whole paradise promise and the hope. It sounds like you always had doubt regarding that as well. So it doesn't really sound like, other than the fear that was being
Yeah.
instilled, maybe some obligation, some guilt, whatever the fog as they talk about. Uh, it doesn't sound like there was a lot there that you were really connected to.
No.
Gotcha.
Hated going out in service more than anything, probably. We had a small town. Our territory was, of course, right around my school. And hated it. Hated that so much. I would, anytime somebody answered the door that I knew it was a person I knew or their mom, I would be trying to hide behind somebody and looking down and looking over, trying to put my hair, like whatever I could do to disappear. I tried to do that. I tried to not knock on doors very hard. All of that. I hated going out in service, except for the coffee break. But beyond that, hated it. Hated it.
Well, and coffee break was the community part, right? And I think you talked about earlier the community at the Kingdom Hall. Did you have any friends there or anything at the
I
hall?
did
Did
have
you?
a couple of friends. One of them, the elder's daughter, I recently, so in August, my sister said to me, um, you know, that mom used to pay her mom to let you spend the night. And I was like, what? Because she was our daycare. So, and I was like a bad kid because I had a worldly dad. So apparently I guess some of the nights that I would spend the night thinking I was spending the night with my friend, her mom was being paid by my mom. I just heard that. So I'm like, oh, that puts things in a different light a
That's
little
really
bit.
sad.
Um, and I had a couple of friends in the hall. Yeah, I mean, sort of not the best of friends. One that I that I considered my best friend. Now I know my mom paid her mom to let me spend the night. So I don't know about that. But yeah, I mean, I think, I don't even know if she knew about that part though. I do feel like we were friends and we talked about a lot of stuff. And she told me she was an elder's daughter and she told me stuff that I 100% know that she never told anyone else. I don't even know to this day if she's ever told anybody. I never heard of her getting in trouble in any kind of way. So I imagine that nobody knows anything because of what she was saying, what we were doing, nobody knew anything because otherwise there would have been repercussions, I'm pretty sure. So
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm sure that your friend was probably your friend. Um the setup between adults as far as the payment and everything was another thing,
yeah.
but I'm sure you all had fun. Is probably
Yeah.
real,
Oh yeah.
and something to connect to. Very real.
Yeah.
Uh,
So
so, uh, so how did things progress? Because I know that your story has some things that happened pretty early on in it. This isn't a story where you, as I understand, you
was
weren't one of Jehovah's Witnesses until your 40s or late
nope.
30s or something.
Nope. It's
So,
pretty quick.
yeah, pretty quick. So, so what went down? How did things happen?
So I don't I I have been trying for 6 months now, at least 6, 7 months, to remember any detail about my baptism. I don't remember anything, not one thing. I don't remember what state it was in because we had district conventions in one state, we had circuit assemblies in my town. I kind of feel like maybe it was in my town, but that I don't know. I don't remember anything. And I don't know if that is like a trauma response to that because I didn't connect to it at all. I don't, do you dedicate your life to Jehovah? Oh, whatever the questions are. I remember them asking me. I vaguely remember being terrified, standing up and saying yes with a group of people. I don't remember who was in that group. I don't remember if there was 5 people, 25 people. Again, I don't remember if it was what state I was in, if it was a little assembly, if it was a big one. I don't remember the actual dunk. I don't remember anything about that. There is one reason that comes up in a little bit that may be why I was in a car accident and there was some head trauma about a year later. So that could be part. There's some chunks I don't remember a lot. But yeah, I remember 0 about my baptism, but I believe I got baptized somewhere around the age of 12 or 13. I had older brothers and sisters. They had gotten baptized. They had pioneered and auxiliary pioneered, I believe. My brother went to Bethel my older brother went to Bethel when I was probably around that age too, 12-ish, somewhere in that. So I think that I kind of think that I might have gotten baptized after we visited Bethel. I did think Bethel was kind of cool when we went there when I was a kid and we saw the printing presses and all of that. I thought that I always like to write books. So like watching books getting like made, I thought was pretty cool. And he stayed there. My brother stayed there for, I believe, 16 years in Bethel. He was a almost lifer in Bethel.
That's a good amount of time. Yeah.
It's a long time. Yeah. And he also did it. I mean, him and my dad got into a big fight. He moved out of our house. He moved in with a brother for a few months. That was when he was 18. I think he applied when he was 18 because he left very shortly after he turned 19 years old and never came back. He never came back to the state. I mean, he'd come back and visit once in a while, but never came back to live near my dad or any of the crazy stuff.
So you ended up, I guess, how much older than you were your, I guess, were you the baby?
No, I'm in the middle. So I have a brother that's about 4, with the no birthdays thing. He's 4 years younger than me. My sister is, I think, 5 years older than me. And then my brother's about 4 or 5 years older than her. So he's probably about 10 years old, 9 to 10 years older than me. I think 9, but I'm not sure.
So, so you had then siblings who had preceded you in baptism.
Yeah.
Obviously, and I know we're going to talk about the brain trauma and such, but do you remember at all what precipitated any of it? Like, do you remember wanting to get baptized, or if you just felt like you had to because your other
Right.
siblings
I
did?
think
Was
there
it
was a
just
couple. I think
time?
I felt like I had to, it was like the next thing that you're supposed to, right? So I think I felt pressure in that way to do it. I don't know if I was pressured by my mom. I don't remember that. But I mean, I think it was just kind of a all around pressure. When are you good? Have you thought about it? Well, when are you going to do that? From a young age. And then I did like the teenagers that my sister was hanging out with that were witnesses. Cool. We had fun. We went to the lake. We went hiking and went and did stuff. Like we had a good time. We had fun. We laughed. We listened to music. It wasn't bad music, but it was maybe borderline, and it was fun. We just had good times. So I think that could have been something that made me want to get baptized, just because all of them were baptized. They were 16, 17, whatever, 15, 16, 17. And I liked hanging out with them and I liked going places and doing things with them. And they were all doing this thing, So I think if anything made me want to get baptized, it was probably that. But I don't know. I do remember feeling like it was something that I was just supposed to do. I kind of had to do, but I think maybe that maybe precipitated it. Like, maybe I want to because they're all doing it. And they were all cool. They were fun. Like, they were fun people to hang out with. My
I can see
sister,
that you wanted to fit in.
yeah. And yeah, and we were all having a good time. And a lot of them were elders, kids, and I'm like, well, they're cool, like it's okay, And so I think that probably was part of it. Plus, also at the age where, of course, like, oh, he's kind of cute, or at the assemblies or whatever. I think that probably too was just like, well, if anybody starts dating, you kind of have to be baptized, I think, and whatever. So, and it was like, well, I'm getting up there in age, 12, 13 or whatever. Like, I better do this thing, I don't know. It's just crazy when I think about it, but yeah.
Yeah, the ripe old age of 12 or 13, you better make a
Right.
lifelong decision.
I know, like, was I in middle school yet at this point? Like,
Yeah, it's pretty wild when you think about it. You go, I mean, maybe you have kids today, I don't know, but go look at a 12, 13-year-old kid, if you've got a friend who has one,
yeah,
or at a
yeah.
park or whatever, and it's like thinking about, is that person ready to dedicate their life to anything
I've
long
absolutely
term?
thought of
No.
that with my kids growing up, looking at them around that age, and I'm like, oh my God,
Yeah.
there's no way that I should have been allowed to do that. Like, that's crazy. I have a niece that got baptized, I believe, at 9 years old.
Mm.
And I'm like, ugh, it breaks my heart because I'm just like, what if, guys? What if? Look at me over here. What if? Like, what if she happens to make a different decision, a different choice? What if she happens to be gay? What if anything just changes her mind? Then what? Are you guys prepared to do that? I mean, I guess probably,
Mhm.
probably, I
Yeah.
suppose, but it doesn't make sense. It does
Clearly they
not make
are.
sense
They
to
do it
me.
all the time.
Yeah.
So you got baptized, you said around 12, 13. Uh, what happened after that?
I was disfellowshipped at 14. Hanging out with the elder's daughter. To be honest, everything, I know everybody thought I was the bad association. Every single thing that I was ever introduced to, almost every single thing that I ever got in trouble for or that was bad, was I was not the first one doing it. I was going along with my friend and hanging out with her and doing stuff with her. So um she had a bunch of friends from school, that she would like sometimes sneak out with and hang out with. And, we were going to go for a walk to the park, except for we'd walk over to this person's house, her friend's house. I would be there. I was sure along for the ride, and I was like, okay, cool, whatever. But definitely there was, a lot of stuff that she was doing that I was like, okay, I'll do it too. Even one time we snuck out to an R-rated movie. We lied and said we were going somewhere else or to a different movie or something. I don't remember, but we lied. And on the way back, I told you I'm blind. My glasses fell off or got broken. And so then we're walking home. I'm blind. And my friend is like, okay, we had to cross this big street, right? Heavy traffic. She's like, when I say run, run. Got it. Right behind you. She says run. I get hit by a car, and I am like 1 or 2 feet behind her, and I got hit by a car. I flew into this parking lot and laying there, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm alive. I'm like, I felt it. I'm like, okay, I'm good. Oh, we're in so much trouble. How are we going to explain why we were here? Right. So I jump up and I'm continuing to try to walk away. And people are like, hold on, you just got hit by a car. The guy that hit me is bawling. He is terrified. And I'm like, I gotta go. Like, I gotta go. We are gonna get in trouble. We gotta get home. And we were only a few blocks away from her house. And one of her sisters pulls up. She pulls into this gas station and she's like, you guys are so dead. And she's like, get in the car. And so we're like let's get in the car, because we knew we were in trouble, because like we had obviously, if she saw us and was looking for us and telling us we were dead, then that meant our parents knew that we weren't where we were supposed to be. Now I'm hit by a car and whatever. So we're getting in her car, and all these bystanders are like, she's bleeding. Like, you have to wait for an ambulance. And nope, we didn't do any of that. We got in the car and we left, and nobody took me to the hospital. We got yelled at for about 2 more hours. And by her parents, her elder dad, her mom, my mom came over, picked me up. No, yeah, again, never saw a doctor.
Yeah, that's what's blowing my mind here. You were hit by a car, you're bleeding. Let's not get you checked out. Let's yell at you.
For like hours. I remember sitting there so long that if you've ever experienced trauma and you sit like bodily trauma,
Yeah, not like that.
and you sit there for a while, you start getting stiff. Like everything was getting stiff. And I just felt like, can we wrap this up? Like, can we stop? We will never sneak out to an R-rated movie again. Can I go home? Like, I didn't even want to go to a hospital at that point. I just wanted to go home and go to bed. And so, yeah, we went home, went to bed. I remember the next morning being like, wow, yeah, I feel like I got hit by a car. Like, I could definitely feel it. I was okay. I had road rash all over my face, on my arm, my leg, bruised. I looked like I got hit by a truck. It was a car, but and then our punishment. So that was Sunday. It was a Saturday night. So Sunday, I got to sit there. I got to not go to meeting. And that was like that was the silver lining. Is I was like, sweet. At least I don't have to do that. Cool. I'll just lay here. And then, but she made me go to school the next day, totally road rashed and everything. I even actually got that. I got the nickname Roadkill at school. Like, cool. Thanks, Mom. I'm not already outcast enough. Let's send me to school with road rash on my face. This is perfect. So yeah, I was called the Roadkill for at least a year or two in middle school. So that was fun.
I'm just I have to laugh at the nickname. I mean, that's just that is kids.
Yeah.
But I think that anybody listening to this that has just any sense in their head is saying to themselves, why wouldn't you go make sure she's okay?
Yeah.
That should be. You see how distanced Jehovah's Witnesses are from normal humanity.
Yeah, because it wasn't about that. It was about us sneaking out.
Yeah, it's
And
about
us
crime
doing
and
something bad.
punishment.
Yeah, it was us lying. That's what they were
Yeah.
concerned about. I don't actually remember anyone saying, "Are you okay?" Except for the people at the gas station. They were all terrified.
So what you're saying then is absolute strangers were concerned
Yeah.
for your health,
And if I was
but
even
Jehovah's
okay,
Witnesses were
telling me to
concerned
wait
for your
for an
spiritual
ambulance.
health.
Yeah, they had already called 911. I was only probably 13 at the time. I mean, 100 pounds, 13-year-old little girl. And I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm good.
But like you could have had internal damage or swelling of the brain that could have
Probably definitely at
killed
least
you
a
in the
concussion.
night.
I'd say I at least probably had a concussion, if nothing else.
Yeah, I mean, you could have died, and they're so
I could have went to sleep and not woke up. Yeah.
petty and stupid that they're just sitting there worried about, oh, well, she snuck out to an R-rated movie. Let's
You know
make
what's
sure
even
she's
stupider?
okay.
The movie. The elder's daughter wanted to see The Cowboy Way. That's the movie we stuck out to. This movie's so dumb. Like, after we saw it, I was like, this was not worth any of this. Yeah.
So you watch this movie, obviously you have some scarring from it in many ways. Not just the physical ways, but the mental and emotional ways, probably, of seeing no
Way more
one
than the
care
physical.
about your
Yeah.
well-being.
Yeah. I think the emotional stuff is way, like, I got over the car accident in a week or whatever, 2 weeks, I felt fine, or the getting hit by a car. But yeah, that nobody cared. And it was just like, I remember her sister, like, you guys are so dead. And then somebody was like, she just got hit by a car. And it's like, she has to wait for an ambulance. And she's, no, who cares? She's fine, or something to that effect. Like, get in the car, you're dead. Well, like, okay.
And also, isn't you guys are so dead? It almost sounds like the person couldn't wait to get you guys and to go get you in trouble, which is kind of the JW way, right? Got a rat on everybody. And if I can get you in trouble, then it takes the heat off me, right?
Exactly.
I'm now better than you. It's like the ultimate virtue signal in a way. Like, I'm so much better than these, awful kids.
I felt like that happened in her family. There was a lot of kids in her family, and I felt like that happened. I felt like if somebody got in trouble, everybody would focus on that so that nobody was paying attention to anything they were doing. And again, I knew a lot of stuff people were doing. I just never said anything to anybody. I just didn't feel like it was why are we trying to get people in trouble? Like, let's just not do that. Like, who wants to be in trouble?
But do you see how awesome it was to the other people? Like, she was like celebrating. You're so dead. This is the best day of my life.
Yeah.
That's messed up. What a horrible culture inside of Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah. Yeah.
Horrible culture.
But yeah, and then I mean things just progressed. Like, honestly, it was like she had a lot going on with worldly kids at the school, right? And she went to a different school. She was also in a different congregation. But she had a lot going on with those kids. So I would go hang out with my elder daughters, this elder daughter's friend, she's my friend, and her dad's an elder, her mom's, all these great things. So I'd go over there. Nobody would ever look at her like she was doing anything. She was doing a lot. And so we were like, we'd sneak out and go to people's houses. It was all her friends, but I became friends with them too. Actually, the trauma later, the car accident, was when I was in a car with a bunch of her friends. But yeah, like, so she was telling me things she was doing, stuff I had never even thought of ever. I had never talked on the phone with a boy. I had never kissed a boy. I had never nothing. And yeah, so things kind of progressed, I guess. I got a job at Burger King at 14 years old. And I was outside on a break. A bunch of people were taking, or several people, coworkers were taking a smoke break by the dumpster. I went outside to take my break. I didn't own cigarettes. I bummed a cigarette or something. I smoked a cigarette. I don't know whose it was. I was 14. And I was standing out there smoking a cigarette with them. And one of the girls that worked there was like a friend of mine from school. I thought she was really cool. Like, we really got along. She was gorgeous. Like, we got along. We just had really, same friends, all that. And I know she was out there with me smoking. It was probably her cigarette. I'm not sure. But I was told, which I don't know if this is all true. I don't know who told on me or what, but I was told some elders went through the drive-thru and saw me smoking. I don't know if that's true. I don't know. I have no idea. It seems weird now thinking about it, but it's possible for sure. It's a small town. It's possible.
Somehow somebody knew.
Huh?
Somehow somebody knew.
Yeah, somebody knew.
I could see that happening. But boy,
Yeah.
you have bad luck. You get hit by a car, and here's a witness. Now you're smoking your first cigarette. Exactly. Here's a witness.
I got busted all the time. Like, I'm telling you. They found my mom, even sort of a few years ago, kind of recently, told my kids, oh yeah, your mom used to hide all her bad music there. In the vents of my room, I would put my CDs and stuff because, okay, my dad was racist, so he didn't like my music. And my mom didn't like rap music because of the Jehovah's Witnesses. But even then, it would be like Brandy like Monica, like R&B, Usher or something. Like, and they would snap my tapes. Well, at first it was tapes, then it was CDs, then moving on the line, but they would destroy my music all the time. Like that was like one of my parents' favorite pastimes was finding any music that I had and destroying it. I bought the same albums because you had to buy stuff back then. There's no streaming. You can just look stuff up on YouTube. You had to buy everything. I bought the same albums probably five. Some of them I bought at least 5 times. And they just loved destroying my music. That was about the only thing that I really got in trouble for as far mostly at home was just like music, was my music. Other than that, I never really got into trouble except for like the few got hit by a car, snuck out to an R-rated movie, like the couple that smoked a cigarette, elders drive by.
But just listen to it's just sometimes it's the words we say. It's I had to hide my music in the vents. Like
Mhm.
like what kind of prison were we living in where we had to hide the contraband like this? That's crazy. Children shouldn't grow up this way. And then when you are out and you're experiencing any freedom and you did take a puff of the cigarette or maybe you smoked a whole, I don't know how deep it went, but it's like that's gonna be such a big moment in your life over such a nothing thing.
Literally nothing. People ask me to this day, they're like, what did you do to get kicked out? Like smoked a cigarette. Like what? Yeah. Yeah. Like, no. Like
So then how does the story go? So the
I got
elders.
a judicial committee.
Mhm.
My mom said the elders want to meet with you. I vaguely remember sitting in that room, awkward, feeling so bad, so little, so like, oh, all these old men that, I can't imagine the people that have gone through any kind of sexual assault and had to go in a judicial committee because mine was about cigarettes and it felt horrible. It felt bad. And I cried. I remember crying and telling them how sorry I was. And again, I had never really been in trouble with anything as far as the Jehovah's Witnesses were concerned. My mom knew about CDs and stuff. I don't know if she ever told the elders about that. None of that ever came up, like at the meeting or at the judicial committee or whatever. But yeah, as far as like the witnesses, I had only been in trouble once for smoking one cigarette. And I told them I was sorry. I cried. I remember crying because I knew my mom was like really upset. And that's why I was really the most upset, right? It was because she was so upset. And I remember standing out of the room for what felt like 5 minutes. It did not feel like a long time at all. And then they called us back in the room and they were like, yeah, we don't feel like you're repentant and you will be disfellowshipped. And I was just like, okay. And then to be honest, I was like, oh, this is the worst thing ever. Oh, but I feel so good. Like I felt like a weight had lifted off of me in a way. I remember being like, oh, this is horrible. I have to tell my friends. I have, my mom. I got to tell my brothers and sisters. And I could see in my mom's face I was killing my mom. Like, and she likes to act like she would actually say that, like it killed her or whatever. And I could see that it was hurting her a lot. And my mom is a really nice person. She's very nice. Anybody that has ever met my mom, that's the first thing they'll say is like, oh, she's so nice. Yeah. But I did feel like, okay, all right then. Like, well, I didn't have to tell them I'm leaving. I didn't have to make the decision. They made it for me, you know. I did call. I told my mom and I told the elders that I was going to do everything to get back, right? And I remember calling my one elder, the elder's daughter. I remember calling her and being like, "Wow, so this just happened, and this is what's happening." And she knew what she was doing. So like I mean she knew like I wasn't like a bad person to her. I'm doing the same thing you are, whatever. Um She cried. I remember us both crying a lot. I had kind of talked to a boy in the congregation or in the different congregation a little bit. And I remember telling her to tell him, like, tell him, I don't know. Like, we didn't talk that much, you know what I mean? And I was like, you're 14. And I just remember telling her, like, I'm going to do everything I can to get back. I'll be back soon. You know, like, we can't talk now, but I'll be back. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, but I'll be back. And then I went to a couple meetings. I don't know how many. I feel like two, if I had to guess, I would say, I think right around two, but maybe a few more. But I remember every time going in, everyone staring at me. I don't think I went for the meeting. I didn't go to the meeting that they announced it. But I started going after that. And then it was horrible. It was horrible. I was 14 years old, and the only people that I was allowed to hang out with my entire life now couldn't talk to me, looked at me sad with pity, and some not with pity, some like, ew, what did you do? You know, the ones that I cared about the most, I feel like looked at me more pitifully, like, oh, you poor thing. Must be because you have a worldly dad or something, like, whatever. But yeah, I remember people just looking at me and me feeling horrible. And again, this loving place sucks. This loving place is just sucking everything out of me to go here. And I remember being in the car because I'd leave right before they'd say the prayer, or whatever, or right when they were singing or something, and going and sitting in the car and just bawling until my mom came out. And I remember twice for sure doing that. And I don't know if I went more, and that could be from the car accident. I don't remember how many meetings I went to, but I was like, I'm gonna try. And then I was like, this is not right. How do you treat somebody like this? And I was 14, I was a kid. So it just didn't feel right. And in my house, my mom still talked to me. My sister had moved out. She was in another state. My older brother was in Bethel. Zero communication. I've had two conversations with him in 28 years. So now at this point, it's 28
Because
years.
you smoked one cigarette at 14 years old.
Yes. And both of the conversations that I had with him was him telling me why he felt like he was right doing what he's doing. You know?
Whatever he has to do to justify his
Exactly. And what's
behavior.
crazy is I had the same conversation with him 15-ish years ago. He called me, I remember, and I was like, oh, what is this number? I was like, who is this? And I answered the phone, and I'm like, hello? And then he told me who he was, and then I was like, what's happening? Like, was he on the phone for? Because first I thought maybe my parents died or something. I didn't know, like, why he was calling me out of nowhere. And he was calling me to tell me there had been a fight, but I'll tell you about that later because it was funny. But I just get this call out of nowhere of him telling me why he's shunning me. Like, bro, it's been like 13 years. I'm like, okay.
Also, just what a horrible thing to do, to just call somebody that you're not talking to and to just tell them why they're bad and you're not talking to them.
Yeah. And he hadn't even seen me in at least 13 years.
Again, where is the love?
Who's now my husband at this time. We had just bought a house. We weren't married at that time, but we had just bought a house. And it was funny because he said, I don't agree with your partying lifestyle. And okay, because after I did get disfellowshipped, there was a little bit of time where I was hanging out with worldly kids and drinking and partying as a teenager a little bit, right? But when he called me, I laughed when he said that. I literally started laughing, and he was like, what's funny or something? And I was like, you don't know me. I was like, I can't tell you the last time I've been to a party. You know, I have 3 children. They're in sports. I work 2 jobs and I'm going to school. I was like, just so you know, I am sitting right now where you interrupted me with this phone call. I am sitting in my walk-in closet on the floor trying to finish a paper that's due by midnight. And I'm hiding from my children. They're older kids, like they were fine. But if I sat at my desk, they would interrupt me 9,000 times. So I'm like, I need to go to my room. I literally went in my closet to try to get this paper turned in. And then I get this call from my brother telling me he doesn't like my partying lifestyle. I was like, I want to go to a party. I'd love to go to a party. I haven't been to a party in years. Like, you have no idea what you're talking about. You don't know me.
And on the, I don't know, the hierarchy of good humans versus bad humans, if we're going to state it that way, or healthy versus unhealthy, I'd rather be a partier than a jerk who shuns his own sister and calls her to tell her why she's so bad and why he's doing it to justify his own actions.
To make himself feel better. And that's what it was. That phone call was for him. It was not for me. It was
that was
not
about
for me
him.
at all. It was not for me at all. And yeah, he doesn't even know me. I'm like, you literally don't know me. And when I did know you, you were mean. So that was another thing. He was a witness, right? And he went off to Bethel. So he's super witness, but he was mean. His one of his friends, I remember I was about 5 years old and five, maybe seven, between that age. And I remember going to his friend's house with him because he was babysitting me. He had to babysit me. He took me to his friend's house. His friend had a piranha and they were dunking my fingers in there in the thing, like trying to get the piranha. I don't think they were trying to get it to bite me, but trying to terrify me. I mean, I'm crying, I'm bawling, and they're sticking my fingers in a piranha tank. And he was mean. He would tickle torture us. So where he'd pin us down and tickle us until we were crying. I remember he tickled me. This is probably too much information, but he tickled me. I was about 5 years old. Tickled me until I like peed on myself and then screamed at me to clean myself up before mom got home, and I was going to get in so much trouble. And I was like, oh, I hate this. Can you not be my babysitter? You're horrible. Like
But
him not
Tana,
talking to me. Huh?
he shuns you because you're so bad.
Right. And I'm like,
What a terrible person you are.
Right. I'm such a bad person. And I'm saying he was doing this stuff to me when I was like 5 or 6. I mean, I was a little girl, and you're like dunking my hand in a piranha tank for giggles.
Yeah,
I
that's
guess.
messed up. That's abusive. That's abusive. That's messed up.
Oh yeah, yeah. He gets mad because I've told people that before. I told my sister. I told my mom. I'm like, I don't care that he doesn't talk to me. He was mean to me. I don't actually care that he doesn't talk to me. We're never close. That was one shunning that I was like, me, all right. Like I honestly, I was like, whatever.
So you said that, so he was shunning you. You said you were still living at home with your mom.
Yep.
Obviously you're 14. And
Yeah.
you said, just the way you said it was kind of like, well, she talked to me. But I guess I would ask, did the relationship change?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. We have a totally different relationship. I still have a relationship with her, but very, very distant. It's mostly family business as far as she loves my kids. She definitely loves my kids. I think she loves me too. I know she does. But this thing, and my brothers, one's an ex-Bethelite elder. The other one is an elder now, has changed completely. He is 180 since like during COVID. He really got deep into it during COVID. And so I don't know that they pressured her to not talk to me, but I think they probably do. And they don't
But your
talk to me, and they
mom's an
defend
adult. She's
themselves.
responsible for her own, how she treats people.
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And then she'll say, I do notice, I didn't realize that the spiritual head of the house could still try to preach to somebody. Because I'm like, why will this lady not give a I feel like it's been almost 30 years
Your
not
mom?
doing this. But she will, we don't talk very much, but when we do, inevitably something comes up about the witnesses, about
Oh,
somebody missing me. They don't
Tana,
miss me. They don't talk about me. It's been like 30 years.
that's because Jehovah's, you know, Jehovah's Witnesses can't love us because they don't know what love is. They can't love us for who we are.
Yeah.
They're in love with their own reflection, and they hope that eventually we will come back and look like them
You
and
will
think
join
like them and
them
be
in
like them.
their thinking and what they believe. Right. And I'm
Very
like,
narcissistic.
super.
And it's not really about who we are other than that we're potential Jehovah's Witnesses. There's care there. I mean, our parents care about us in some ways, but as far as really being able to actually use the word love, like they love us for who we are, they do anything for us, no, they wouldn't.
Not
Jehovah's
true.
Witnesses are who they really love,
Yeah. They love.
and themselves
Yeah,
at the end of the day.
exactly. And it's always about, she'll always talk about the brothers and sisters. And
Hmm.
I tried to have a conversation with her, one of my best friends that was actually like more like family than family passed away from breast cancer. And I was crying, and my mom called me. She said, I heard what happened. I said, I'm here. I'm in Ohio right now. That's where I'm at, you know? And, and she's like, how are you, or something? And I'm bawling, I'm driving, and I'm like, I'm just trying to get home. I don't know what to do. And I remember her turning it into a preaching thing.
Of
And
course
I'm
you
like,
do.
God, I just like, no. Can you just be a mom for a second? Could you just be my mom and not my mom, the Jehovah's Witness? Is that awesome? And it's not. It's not. And then she said something to me that confused me, because I was like, was that how it used to be? Because she said something like, well, everyone will get resurrected, even the unrighteous. I'm like, first of all, are you calling me unrighteous? My friend unrighteous that is dying. First of all, who are you talking about? We might need to clear this
How
up because I'm getting
awful.
angry.
Your friend who just died, well, she's unrighteous. I mean, they don't hear
Yeah, I
the
don't know if she was
words
even
that they
talking. I'm
say.
like, is she talking about her? Because my friend was also a lesbian and married. And I'm like, was she talking about her unright, or was she talking about me too? Like, I don't know if it was a dig at me, my friend, both of us. It felt wrong though. I was looking
Of course
for,
it's wrong.
yeah, it felt like I just needed a,
Yes.
like, you're gonna be okay, or well, you'll get through it, or anything,
It's a horrible thing
anything
to say.
besides what I was told. And then I was like, wait a minute, worldly people get resurrected too. Is this the same as it used to be? I don't know
Yeah, they
what.
have always said, yeah, there's the resurrection
Okay,
of the righteous and the unrighteous.
that part I couldn't remember, and I was like, was that true back then? And then they kill him again? What's the deal? Like, she did get me confused on. Wait a minute, what's the doctrine on that? Because I did. That was the one time that I was like, I don't remember that. Is that a thing?
So can I ask, I mean, and yeah, that is the wages sin pays is, I mean, they're still by their own token, the wages sin pays is death. So you've died, and so therefore you've paid the price for your sin, and you can be resurrected. Of course, you know, as I always say, well, say hi to Hitler and Mussolini in the new system for me. You know, you all can be boys, but I won't be there because I'm so terrible. I'm an apostate. But
Yeah.
you know, you can adopt Hitler as your adoptive son to replace me. Um, but you know, it's just so it just shows how silly it all is. But how did your relationship change at home when you're 14 years old? What was it that changed? Were you,
Everything.
I mean,
She barely talked to me. I mean,
mm,
she would talk to me. It wasn't like I was invisible, but it was just not the same. It was not very much communication. My sister was out of the house. One more thing, too, on the nothing makes sense with
mhm,
everybody's so good that's Jehovah's Witnesses and blah, blah, blah. Before I got disfellowshipped, I think right around the time I got baptized, when I was hanging out with all the cool teenagers. Well, one group of those teenagers, their dad, the elder, mom pioneer, they had moved from out of state, and their dad was the president of a bank in our town, which I thought was crazy because, like, wow, we got some educated. Like, so you have a degree or something? Like, that was one thing I was like, your dad have a degree? Did he go to college? Like, I thought that was like, oh my gosh, because I always liked school. I did really good in school, so I was like, oh, did he go to college? Like, and he's an elder? Wow, that is cool, you know? But him, another Jehovah's Witness, a woman, and I think there was a third, were indicted for fraud from this bank. And I remember, okay, they were indicted for big time theft, big time fraud. I mean, we're talking about a lot of money. He had like housing development. I mean, he was giving people cars, before the trial. So I don't know. And that's the thing. So someone in my family was given a car. And I was like, because my sister married into this family, right? She married one of the sons. And they got a car, and then and I'm like, so he didn't do it, but he's getting rid of all his money before the trial? Okay, well, that's weird. And then I remember Jehovah's Witnesses filling this federal courtroom. And I went a couple times. My mom, I think, went every day, or she went a lot. And I remember us filling this courtroom in support of this guy and the other witnesses. I think there was definitely two, and I think there might have been a third. And I just remember listening. I didn't know everything they were talking about because I didn't know the financial world, but I understood for the most part what was happening. And I'm like, I'm looking around at the court, and I'm like, I mean, they're going to jail, right? Like, you guys can hear this, right? They're going to prison. Like, but it's full on support. All these witnesses filling the courtroom. And then a few months later, I smoke a cigarette and I'm out. Like, that made no sense to me. But like, all these wonderful Jehovah's Witnesses, wait, they were stealing from people? They were stealing money? Why do we need money? Why do they need that house with the pool? Like, why do they need all that stuff in this system? That doesn't make sense. Also, there's these great people that are criminals, and they got found guilty and went to federal prison. And we're in support of them. And I'm like, this is weird.
Well, of course they're in support of them. They were given cars and such, right? Like, none of those people were going to take their unrighteous gains and give it back, were they? That was all stolen, right? That was property that was acquired, probably with stolen money, that was embezzled or whatever, and they bought cars and they gave them away to get rid of evidence. But the witnesses gladly took that.
I don't know. It was all crazy, and I was just like, these are the good people. Like, again,
none of them had morals then. They weren't opposed to taking the stolen property, essentially. But right. You smoke a cigarette at 14 years old and you got to go.
Yeah, I gotta go. Right.
That is pretty wild. So how did things go? So you're disfellowshipped, you're not going to meetings anymore. Things have changed a little bit at home. How did things, I know there's some other things that happened. How did things continue to progress?
Well, I think my friend that just passed from breast cancer, she lived right around the corner from me, and her family was awesome. Again, they were a mixed race family. The mom is white, the dad is black. My friend was black. Her brother looked white, but he's white and black. And they were awesome. They were the best people. They made me feel like family. After this, I have to call their mom because we talk almost daily. She's like, you got this, call me after it's over. And I'm like, okay. But we talk all the time. And I always used to call her mom. She honestly was like a mom to me. And my friend, was like my sister, and they were amazing to me. And her older brother was like my annoying older brother. He shot us with BB guns, and I mean, he treated me like I was his annoying little sister, and they were awesome to me. And it showed me there are like really good people that like me and are nice to me and love me and treat me good for just for me. They don't know, and they knew some of the crazy stuff. My friend who was Black knew that my dad was racist, and she was like, "Well, to be honest, he's never been mean to me. He's pretty cool." She's like, "He's funny." She's like, "He's funny. He's never been mean to me, and until you is a bad person to me," she was like, "I know that you don't like that, and I don't like that either." And she was like, "But he's never showed it to me." And she was like, "A lot of times racist people show me that they're racist." And she was like, "He's never showed that to me. So I I understand why you feel that way about him." And she was like, "But he's pretty funny and he's really nice to me and whatever." And I'm like, okay. And then now I think about it, I'm like, that says so much about her
Mhm.
that she's like, I'm not going to judge somebody based on what somebody says, even my best friend. I'm going to see how they are to me. And that's how I base my judgment on these people. And I'm like, that's how you should do it. Like, that is how you, not saying my dad, whatever. But
Mhm.
as far as like judging people, that's how you should do it. And it says a lot about her character that she was that kind of person. And her family, they're just a good family. And then I found out that their dad, that he was actually their stepfather, but he treated them amazing. He treated me like his daughter. And I just was like, this is great. Like, there are really good people that are not Jehovah's Witnesses. They've never heard anything about Jehovah's Witnesses. They celebrate Christmas. They got a whole Christmas tree, and they're not bad, and they're not evil, and they're not bad people. And, you know, I liked that. I just liked that. And I just met a lot of people around that time that I could never hang out with before. But now I'm actually getting to know these people, like at school and stuff. And honestly, most of my friends were either Native American, because that's a big culture in South Dakota, Native American or Black. And I had some white friends too, but like I just had everybody as friends. And I'm like, there's nothing wrong with any of these people based on race, based on their religion, based on anything. I like them. In fact, I like these guys more than I like those people at Kingdom. These people are more real. Like, to me, it felt like I was meeting real, genuine friends and not fake friends who I was supposed to be friends with. We're supposed to get along because we're in this religion and we're the same age. Like, literally, that's all we had in common is our age and that we're in this religion. But like these other people, like, we didn't even have to have that much in common. We would bond over our music or over whatever. But they were like really good, genuine people. And they made me feel accepted for me. I didn't have to be this or act this way or be perfect in this way. I could just be like myself. And I think that was cool, but it was also weird because my mom wouldn't let me hang out with anybody still. And so then I used my worldly dad as help me in my manipulation of that, because I was like, that's not fair that now I can have no friends now because I can't talk to those people that you wanted me to be friends with before. I can't have any friends. And my dad is like, no, that's stupid. It's like, I'm drawing the line. You can have friends. You can hang out with your friends. And I did get to hang out with outside of school, outside of whatever. I did get to start hanging out with my friends a little bit. The one was right around the corner, and it wasn't very long. Like, I didn't get to spend nights or stuff like that really very often or anything like that. But I got to see them in their houses, see how their parents acted with them, how they treated me. And it was just really eye opening at that age. I'm like, again, I don't think this makes sense. And it was just like solidifying, like, I don't want to go back to the Kingdom Hall. I feel horrible for what, a year, 2 years, however long they make me say I'm sorry. I don't know, on a cigarette. I don't know how long that could take. I don't know, but I don't want to do it. Like, I just knew at that point, I'm like, I do not want to do that. And that's right before the accident, which is, this is the real thing too that made me be like, no, this is weird. I got into a car accident. I was at school, in high school, and we had an open lunch hour, so we could leave. We could leave campus and come back. 14, 15-year-olds probably should not be driving around town going to get lunch. We don't know how to drive that well, right? But my friend was driving, and we were going to get tacos or whatever. And we had to get gas first. So we go into the gas, and we were pulling out of the gas station. We're in a 86 Plymouth Horizon, similar to like a rabbit, a gremlin.
Like a Dodge Omni, yep.
Yep. So we were in an 86 Plymouth Horizon, and we pull out, and we got hit by a half-ton truck full of lumber, broadsided. It hit on, I was sitting behind the driver. It hit on our side. The girl next to me flew out of the car 30 feet. The driver and myself were trapped. The other girl got out. She had a really gnarly black eye and like a bruised ribs and a concussion. She was actually like, okay, compared to everybody else in the car. Our other friend is laying there 30 feet out of the car, just laying there in a pile, unconscious. We're stuck in the car, unconscious. They got us out with the jaws of life, but I wasn't breathing for at least a minute and a half. And my friend that was driving was clinically dead, not breathing for 6.5 to 7 minutes, which was a long time, which she had a little more brain damage than I did. But they revived us. And then they revived me first, of course, and then they were working on her the whole time. But because we were kids, I actually knew the chief of the fire department. He was a friend's dad. We knew his sons from school, and his son told me, yeah, my dad said that he didn't know who you guys were unrecognizable as far as who we were covered in blood and whatever. And he was like, but he could tell about how old you were. And he said there was no way that he was going to stop working on you guys. Like, he wasn't going to just give up after 5 minutes. He was going to give up after 15 or 20 if you guys didn't come back, So thank God for him. But so I woke up in the hospital, and I didn't know what had happened. I don't even know how many days later it was that I woke up, because I was in the hospital for about 10 days to 2 weeks. And every time I was on so much drugs that every time I woke up, they'd have to tell me the story again. Like, you were in this car accident, blah, 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 blah. Well, so what had happened, I guess, 2 of the girls that were in the car, the 2 that were in the front seat and the one sitting next to us, their moms worked at the hospital. So they get a call, and one of them never worked in the ER, but she had to work in the ER that day. She was a nurse, and she had to be in the ER that day. And they get the call that there's a motor vehicle accident, 4 juvenile females, multiple trauma, like, it was bad, get the teams ready or whatever. And we hung out. Us 4 were thick as thieves. Like, we were together a lot. And I met all of those girls from the elder's daughter, but we hung out all the time. So when they saw the first one of us come in, they knew who the other 3 were. So then that mom that was down there started calling everybody's moms, because she knew that we were all coming in and to get to the hospital. So my mom gets to the hospital, everybody gets to the hospital, everybody's parents. And they were told that I had internal bleeding. They didn't know where I was bleeding from, but I was going to have an emergency surgery, because they had to figure out which one of my organs was bleeding, what was going on internally. I had also broke my back, my hips, my pelvis, everything in 3 places too. Like, it wasn't just like one break. Everything, I was like shattered in my pelvis area and hips and stuff. But that was actually the least of the problems at that point. It was the bleeding. I was bleeding internally, and they were going in for emergency surgery. This is after I was disfellowshipped. I feel like that is the key to this story. Like, that's the part that makes me the most upset about this story, is that I was already disfellowshipped at that time. I was only 15 years old. I had just turned 15 a couple months before that. And I was already disfellowshipped. They had already kicked me out of their church for a cigarette. And my mom told them no blood. And the doctors, I heard this part of the story later because of the two nurses that were my friend's parents were there. And they said that there was a heated discussion between even the doctors and the nurses. The nurses are like, who cares what her mom says? This is crazy. She's 15 years old. And some of the nurses knew me because, again, I was friends with their daughters. And they're like, no, this is crazy. This is crazy. She's 15. She needs blood. Who cares? And the doctors are like, mom is saying no. Like, it was a very heated discussion, even between the medical professionals. Then my dad showed up. Thank God for my dad showing up. And it being noon on a Tuesday or whatever, where he was at work, clear-headed, and got the call. And he showed up at the hospital and he said, no, you do whatever you have to do to save my daughter's life. She can have blood. Whatever you got to do. You do whatever you got to do. So again, I woke up, days later, I'm hearing all of this. I heard my Bethelite brother had been there. He had come from New York. And I'm like, because he thought I was going to die? Like, is that why? Because he doesn't even talk to me. Why would he be here? Like, that was another thing that was
if shunning's the right thing to do, you shun to the end. Why suddenly?
That was another thing in my head. I was like, perspective. What do you mean he was here? That doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. Then I was thinking later, I'm like, I wonder if he was there to try to, like, if she called him right away and he was trying to get there to support the no blood decision or support my mom in the fact that I did have blood and she was probably really tore up about that. I'm sure.
You did end up having blood then.
Yeah, and I didn't know that until August too. I actually asked my sister. So the whole thing was like, it was very hush hush on the blood. No, we never talked about it. I heard about it, and then nobody ever would talk about if I got blood or not. And I knew that it was a very contentious thing. I had heard about the fighting, right?
So you didn't even know you didn't even know, like, talk about like bodily autonomy. You didn't even know what had happened to your body or what was put in it to help you or whatever.
No, I actually just asked my sister in August. I said, Cassie, I have a question, and this is so weird. And I don't even know if you know the answer, but I've been thinking about it a lot in the last few months. And I said, I know that there was a whole fight about blood with my accident and that dad said I could and mom said no. And, that everything was going on at the hospital. And I said, do you know, did I actually need blood? Did I actually get a blood transfusion? And she was like, oh, yeah. She was like, and it was a big deal. Like, you did, but it was a huge fight and nobody ever talked about it. And I said, I remember nobody talking about it. I remember it was like a taboo subject that we couldn't talk about. But I remember too, because I had to kind of learn how to walk again. I broke my pelvis, hips, back, all that stuff. So I had to kind of, I was first in a wheelchair, then I was on a wheelchair when I was in the hospital, then a walker, I think, and then crutches, and then a cane. So when I could finally get out and about again and drive, I remember going over to some of my friends' house that were in the accident. And one of their moms that was a nurse was there. And she was telling me, she was like, man, it was crazy between your parents. And I didn't know what was going to happen. And I didn't know what was going to happen with your surgery and stuff. And she was like, I just want to let you know, like, if you need somewhere to live, you can live with us. And I was like, what? It was just like, she was just like, I think she just was like, I can't believe a mom would do this or family. Like, this is weird. And of course, they didn't know
this is not normal. This is abusive.
Yeah, she was like, if you need a place, I've talked to my husband and you can live with us. And I was like, thank you, I'm good. Like, it was so weird. It was just weird to have that conversation and see other people like, that's not cool. That's not okay. You can live with us. And I remember her saying that and me being like, why would I need to live with you? And then now I'm thinking about it like, oh yeah, because it wasn't right. Like, that's not normal. It all seemed normal to me, sort of.
Well, of course, it's normal because it was our normal, right? It's just what we grew up in, but it can really be helpful sometimes to see how people on the outside,
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
you tell somebody on the outside your story as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and they look at you like you've got a third eye growing out of your
Yeah.
head or something, and
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, that was actually real. I know it doesn't seem real, but that was really how it
It's my
was.
life. Yeah. It's
And
true.
to
It's
me, it
true.
was normal.
Yeah. And you don't realize how not normal it is until later. And again, I just shut that. Oh, then I mean, I did end up, dealing with other stuff. I had a few years later. So I actually, there was lawsuits involved with that car accident. There was a lot of stuff. Um, Part of my lawsuit was that and I don't remember any of this. I didn't get a lawyer. They got me a lawyer, my parents, whatever. I didn't know any of what was going on. But part of my lawsuit and the money that I won was because they said I would probably never be able to carry kids because of how my pelvis was broken. Instead of looking like this, it looked like this. And there just wasn't room in my pelvis. And they said I probably wouldn't be able to have kids. Well, a year later ish, so still in high school, my first boyfriend, sort of, not even really. My friend was dating his friend, which made us like we ended up hanging out, whatever. It's kind of a forceful situation, but I didn't know looking back, it was kind of forceful,
Sure.
but whatever. Um, but I ended up at barely 16 years old. I'm like, think I'm pregnant. I might be pregnant. And then I'm throwing up and I'm dizzy and I'm tired and I'm and I'm like, no way, dude. Like, no way. What am I going to do? And at that point is when I thought, okay, maybe I should just run away. Maybe I should just go somewhere else and be somebody else. Like, just start over somebody else. Cause I don't know. I'm this bad. Like, as far as Jehovah's Witness standards, very, very bad. As far as my dad, I was pretty sure I was going to die. Like, I was like, this is the worst thing that could happen right now. Shit. And I just was like, oh my God. And I was in super denial. And I actually didn't tell anyone until I was 8 months pregnant. I hid my pregnancy from everyone. I didn't see a doctor. I didn't tell my family. I told one friend. And then I hid it from everybody. I hid it from all my friends. I didn't want any of my friends to know. I didn't want anyone to know because honestly, I wanted it to go away. I didn't know. I was in super denial and I had no coping mechanisms whatsoever. And I remember
And
my
no
mom
safe
was like,
people.
"What's that?"
And also no safe people. No one
No.
that you could go to who would be safe to tell this to.
Yeah, I didn't feel like I could tell anyone. And I remember my mom was like, "I need to run some errands. Come with me." Like, okay, because we didn't go places. Because again, I was disfellowshipped. We didn't really do that anymore very much. And she was like, "Come with me." Okay. And we're riding around. I don't even remember what the errands were, but I remember her being like, "Do you have anything you need to tell me?" Nope. Nope. I'm all good. I'm all set. And she was like, "There's nothing going on with you." And I was like, "No." And this is August 1st. And yeah, she was like, "Nothing going on with you." And I'm like, "Huh." And she's like, "Okay, well, I did notice something. I'm going to ask you a question. Just be honest with me." And I was like, "Okay." She's like, "Are you pregnant?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think so." And she was like, "Okay." And she was like, and then it felt so good. I was like, "Oh, okay." I told somebody, right? And I looked at her face and she was like, okay." And then she was like, "Well, you got to be what? Probably like 4 months or something. You're starting to show." And I was like, "This is August 1st." And I was like, I'm pretty sure it was back in December." And she was like, "What? December?" And I was like, yeah, I think so. That's when she looked like, oh my gosh, her eyes were huge. And she was like, this is a big deal, especially because I was super high risk. I wasn't supposed to be able to have kids. So I was very, very high risk, had zero prenatal care. Funny, I work in women's health now at an obstetrics office. My friends at work can't believe this
Comes
story.
full circle.
My friends at work hate this story, actually. But yeah, so I was super high risk. So the next day we went to the hospital, or went to a doctor. She called these doctors. I got into the best specialist in the town for high risk pregnancies because, again, my pelvis wasn't right. I had to bring all my x-rays. I had zero prenatal care. My first due date was September 6th. So that's how close it was that I cut it. They ended up moving my due date out a little bit, and I had my daughter September 27th, or 28th, sorry, 97. So they ended up moving my due date out because they weren't sure. I wasn't sure on my dates. But yeah, I mean, I only had about 6 weeks before I had her. So I had to go to the doctor all the time, constantly, every day. And then I had my daughter, and my parents were actually really pretty good about that, which was crazy to me. I'm like, the cigarette. Color. Here's the little baby. Okay. But they were really cool about that. My mom really wanted to take her to the hall. She wanted to take her to the Kingdom Hall and buy her dresses and all of that. And I did let her at first. I didn't see the problem with it, I guess. I don't know. And I was also working, so she was babysitting, so she would take my daughter. So they were really helpful in that, in those aspects, as far as with my daughter. And then I moved out so I had her right before I turned 17. I lived with my parents for about another year and a couple of months, because 2 months after I turned 18, I got an apartment. I was working, I got an apartment, moved out. I just didn't feel like my house was like where I should be. Just because of the witness thing. It was just, they were really great about my daughter and stuff. And it was easier, obviously, to live with your parents and not have rent and not, but I wanted to show them that I could do it too, I think, and that I was going to be fine. And that, yeah, I made some bad decisions, but I'm going to be okay. I'm going to deal with that, and we're going to be fine. I'm going to be a mom. Like, we're going to be okay. I remember too, this is when I found out I was pregnant, or when I told my mom I was pregnant, she was like, we got to tell your dad. And I'm like, no, you got to tell my dad. I'm not. I was like, I'm not going to. And this was back in the day of pagers. My sister went with me to the mall. I don't know if she was living with us at that time or if she was just back from out of state for a little bit. I don't remember, but we went to the mall and I had my pager, and my mom was supposed to page me when it was safe to come home, because she was going to tell my dad. And then she was going to let us know when we were okay to come home. And she texted us pretty soon after we got there. And I'm like, she's already texting us or messaging us to call. So we called her from a payphone, and she's like, okay, he took it really well. You can come home. And I was like, I look at my sister and I'm like, no way, dude. And she was like, no, way too soon. She's like, let's wait a little bit. I don't believe this. I don't trust this at all. I'm like, me too. So we stayed at the mall a little longer. We ended up going home, and my dad was pretty okay. He's like, told some fat jokes or whatever. And I thought you were getting chunky or something, whatever. And then he was pretty okay. And I was like, okay, weird. And then I ended up going, in my room later, I heard them fighting, my parents. And I heard my dad, and he was like, she's never going to amount to anything now. She's going to be a welfare mom, a teen welfare mom. She's never going to amount to anything. She's never going to do anything with her life. She's never going to go to college. And I was like, college? I can go to college? Like, I was the third one. That was the first time I heard the word college in my house. I don't think we'd ever talked about it. It was known that we didn't go to college, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember him saying that she's never going to go to college now. And I was like, now that I'm pregnant, now I know college is an option. Damn it. I wish I would have known this. Maybe things would be different. I don't know. But I remember in that moment being like, no, I'm not going to be, I'm not just a statistic. Like, yeah, I made a mistake, guys, but it's not the end of the world. Like, it's not the end of the world here. Like, it's going to be okay. And I just knew like then I was like, well, these are the things I'm not going to do. I'm not going to be a welfare mom for the rest of my life. And I am going to go to school. I'm going to do this. Now they're saying I can't do this. I'm doing it. Now it's like almost like to prove them wrong. Like I'm glad I overheard that argument. I don't know if I would have went to college if I didn't. I don't know. But I went on and so I moved out with my daughter. I ended up dating a dude that was not healthy, verbally abusive, cheated, sometimes physically abusive, all those things. And then I had 2 kids with him. So now I have 3 kids. 3 kids, horrible relationship. I always felt like everything was like, I guess this is what I get, right? This is what you get for going out into the world. Like, this is what you get, right? And I'm not saying I didn't make bad decisions too, for sure. Like there was a little bit of drug use. Good.
Actually, that's what you get because you were raised in an abusive home, in an abusive cult. That's why you get that. It's
Right.
not because you went out into the world. It's just a repetition of patterns, which is a very human thing to do. We tend to find relationships that mirror some of the ones that we grew up around.
Right. Right. Now I know that. I actually have worked a
Yeah.
little bit in domestic violence and I've done some volunteer stuff. And I was an ER responder for people that ended up in the ER because of domestic
Yeah.
violence. And I would help them and point them to resources and stuff. And I did a lot of research on patterns. I know the patterns. Yeah, it was definitely, but in my head, it was, well, I left the Jehovah's Witnesses, so this is what I get,
Yeah, it just shows though how masterfully they gaslight everyone and just manipulate situations because Jehovah's Witnesses set a lot of this stuff up. And then when it happens, then it's like, oh, well, they told me this would happen. Well,
And
because
this
they
is what
set
it
it
is.
up.
Yep.
And then you think, well, they were right. I guess I need to go back. And that's what people do.
Yeah. Thank God for me that I never was like, I don't even know why I say thank God, because there's a whole thing. I don't know what my beliefs are. I have no idea what my beliefs are at this point. But um uh going back, it was just not an option for me. I just never saw. And I think part of that was the blood thing too. It, I mean, if I would have been a full-on Jehovah's Witness, I would have died.
Mhm.
Maybe. I guess unless my dad came and threw, I could have died, because honestly, I don't know if I still had my no blood card or not. I do remember ripping it up. I remember ripping it up at some point after that. Like, I never need this again. This thing should be burned. This is horrible. This
Oh,
is the
heck yeah.
whole thing. Um, but yeah, I think with the blood thing that made me be like, no, this is not right. And the shunning. I mean, to be honest, it was like, I don't want to go back. I don't want to do this to other people. I don't want to be a shunner. I don't want to do this. Like that was one thing. No matter how bad things got, it still never made me like, well, let me go try that again. I didn't do that. And I know why people do, and I understand why people do, but I'm just thankful that it just didn't, it still just, I don't think that's going to make everything right. That didn't feel right ever. So I don't think that's going to make it right. I barely even went to memorials. I think so until my car accident. Well, that was only, I know I went to the memorial after my car accident. I think I went to about probably 5 memorials because my mom would always invite me. And even then, like you haven't seen, you tell me these people miss me and they're asking about me and things like that. And then I get there and they're like, just looking at you weird and pitiful. Oh, poor thing. And I'm just like, I hate this place. This is weird. I do not like it here. It doesn't feel right. And not that all the people, I don't feel like the people are bad. I know some really great Jehovah's Witnesses, like as far as like they're nice and things like that.
Well, I mean,
And
they're nice, but they'll still shun their kids or let them die of a blood transfusion or wait for the
they'll look
world
at you
to
all
be
weird.
healed.
Yeah. And like this, I have heard a lot of stuff. So the one elder's family, they manipulated it. I did nothing compared to what they did. And like, I'm like, none of them are disfellowshipped. How did that work? Knew how to play the system, and one of them threatened legal stuff. I don't know what all happened, and I'm just like, there's a lot of manipulation in that too. And it depends who you are on how much trouble you get into or how people treat you or
The whole religion is manipulation.
oh, it is. Absolutely. Absolutely. And
Literally
I can
all of
see
it. It's all manipulation.
yeah, I can totally see that now. And once you shut a door on something super traumatic like that in your childhood, I never looked at it again. The only times I ever looked at it, I remember when I met my husband, we'd only been dating about 6 months. And I had the 3 kids, and he had 2 kids with his previous marriage. And he was a good dad. So I was like, okay, well, that's cool. He's a really good dad to his kids. I like that, about him. Let's just see how he is and whatever. But I remember my little brother's wedding, and, and my kids were in the wedding. All 3 of my children were in his wedding. And my little brother, we were really close. Like we had been close. Like he never shunned me, and he didn't make me feel bad about myself. He was younger than me. I was his big sister. We did a lot together, and we were close growing up. We also were in the same room, hiding, scared when we were little kids. I think there was we were close, right?
Sure.
And he had never shunned me. Well, he wanted my kids to be in his wedding, his Jehovah's Witness wedding, right? And I'm like, okay. Again, my kids every once in a while sometimes went to meetings if my mom was watching them, if I was working or something like that. And I didn't see the danger in that, but I see it now. But at that time, I didn't. I just felt like, yeah, I always called it extreme. They're in an extreme religion. It's a religion, but it's extreme. I think I used the words culty, some kind of culty. It's a little extreme, but I was like, they're good people. They mean well, that was in my head, I'm just not good enough. I was not good enough to be one of them. I couldn't not do bad things. I was a bad person, bad kid that experimented like all these other kids do growing up in life. But I was bad. So I always felt like, okay, it's a good religion for some people. It's just not for me. I'm bad. I'm not good enough for it. And so my whole life, I pretty much felt like I was like not good enough for the religion, not good enough for my family, kind of. But just moving on. Okay, well, I'm not good enough for that, but I'm going to go do this. I'm good enough to graduate college. So there we go. I'm good enough to do these other things. Where was I at? I forgot where I was at with
Your kids were in your brother's wedding.
Oh, wedding. Yes. So we get all ready because I was going to the wedding. I mean, had I been officially invited? Not sure. At this point, I don't remember. But I know that I was going to the wedding, and we had talked about the wedding. My brother and I had talked about the wedding. I never thought for a second that I wouldn't be going to the wedding.
Your kids were invited and in it. So why would you, as the mom and the sister, not be in the wedding?
Exactly. Right. So I remember my mom saying, well, the kids got to be there a little early for rehearsal. So do you want to drop them off at my house and I'll take them early? And I was like, okay, yeah, that sounds great. So I got all ready, dressed, makeup, hair, got the kids ready as best I could. I knew they were going to get some extra hair stuff or whatever when they got there. Got them ready, took them to my mom's house. So I left my boyfriend. So I was all dressed up and whatever. I was like, I'm just going to go drop them off. I'll be right back. And he's like, okay. And my mom lived like 10 blocks away. So I went and dropped my kids off. And I was standing at her door while they were walking in. And she was like, so I was thinking about it. And so it's fine if you go to the wedding, but I think it would be best if you left for the reception. And I was like, what? And she was like, well, there's going to be a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses there. And I don't want you being there to make them uncomfortable. I was like, what about my kids in the wedding? Like, but that doesn't make them uncomfortable. They're my Jehovah's Witnesses. And she's like, but you're disfellowshipped. And I'm like, oh, that whole dunking thing again. Okay. And I was like, but so none of my relatives, I do have one distant uncle in Florida that happens to be a Jehovah's Witness. I don't know how he got, or like at a door or something. I don't know. But other than that, none of my family is Jehovah's Witnesses. None of our cousins, aunts, uncles, grandparents, anything else was Jehovah's Witnesses. So I'm like, everybody's going to be there. Our whole family is going to be, all my cousins are going to be there. I was like, so there's going to be plenty of worldly people there. Dad's going to be there. And she was like, but you're disfellowship. And I was just like, this is the stupidest thing ever. And then I felt that. I felt horrible and I was crying. And I thought, that's so not fair. It's my brother. Like, me and him were close. Did you talk to him about this? I even said that. I remember saying, like, does he know this? And I don't remember if she said he did or he didn't.
Jehovah's Witnesses make all the calls.
Yeah. And I just thought, this is so messed up.
Control.
And I'm bawling. I leave my kids there, which was actually, I was like, should I take them? And I'm like, no, I don't want to ruin his wedding. I almost said his name. I don't want to ruin his wedding. I love him. I actually really like the girl he's marrying, because even though she was a Jehovah's Witness, she was cool with me. She was nice to me. She knew I was disfellowshipped, and she was still nice to me. Her brother was disfellowshipped too, who she was close with. So I think that kind of made a difference, because she still talked to him too. Okay.
Just want to throw out there, nobody gets a gold star or a trophy for being nice to someone who's disfellowship. You should be nice because that's how you treat other people. You're not a good person because you talk to a disfellowship person. That just puts you at a baseline above shitty person.
You're right. Yeah. That's totally true. Totally. Yeah.
That's a low bar to clear.
It's a pretty low bar. She said hi to me.
Yeah. That's a low bar to clear.
Yeah, now that you mention it, it is. Mm-hmm. It is.
Just throw that out there.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Good point for sure. But yeah, so I get to the wedding. Oh no, I get home first. I get home, and my husband or boyfriend at the time was like, "What the hell? You just left." And I came back and I had makeup all down my face. I mean, I was bawling. And he's like, "What happened? Everything was fine. What happened?" And I told him, and he was like, "Nope, we're going to get the kids." And I was like, "We can't do that. We can't do that to my brother." And he's like, "They are doing this to you. You're not doing anything to your brother." He's like, "This is messed up. You should go get the kids." And I refused, because I felt like that would be ruining my brother's wedding. An hour or two before the wedding, I refused. And my husband was like, well, or my boyfriend at the time, he's like, "I'm not going. He's like, if I go, I'm going to say stuff. So do you want me to go?" And I was like, "Nah, you can stay." I was like, apparently I'm not going to be there very long anyway. I'm going to be there for a little. I said, and honestly, I don't even know if I should go. I was like, but I feel like I should, because he did invite me. And then I was like, we talked about the wedding. So I felt like, this is weird. I think it's just my mom. I think it's my mom. So I was telling him, it's my mom. It's not my brother. It's my mom. So anyways, I go to the wedding and I'm sitting there feeling horrible. I'm trying not to cry the whole time, feeling like the lowest person on the earth. And then I remember him coming up and hugging me and being like, "I'm so sorry. And I don't want it to be like this," or something to that effect. I don't know exactly what he said to me. And then I am bawling and leave. So the only thing, all my family and friends and, my family, my distant family, my cousins, my aunts, my uncles, they all knew we were close. And then they saw me at the wedding. Then they saw us hugging and me bawling. And then probably people saw me in my car crying until I could get it together to even drive home, because it's kind of out of town. And yeah, and I was like, that was gross. That was gross. I don't ever want to put myself or my kids in that. That was gross. And then my sister got married a few years later. She invited me, and my kids were in her wedding. She wanted my kids to be in her wedding. And I loved my sister. And I said, okay, yeah, the kids can be in your wedding. My kids loved my brothers and sisters. My kids loved them. And, I never kept them away from them because they're family. I didn't feel like that was right. Now I still don't feel like I should have kept them away. I feel like nobody should do that to family. And nobody should do any of this to family is what it boils down to. But so my kids were in her wedding, and I remember being like, I'm not doing that to myself again. I'm not getting uninvited at the last minute. I'm not going to show up and everybody treat me horrible. I'm not going. And I didn't go, and I let my kids go. And I remember being at work and even looking at my watch like, oh, well, they're probably doing this now, and this is probably happening. And years later, a couple years later, it could have even been sooner than that. I remember my sister saying, you weren't uninvited to my wedding. I want you to know that you were invited and we wanted you to go. And I'm sorry if you felt like maybe you weren't. And I'm like, well, no, I knew I was invited, but I'd been invited to Danny's too. And then that was awful. That was bad, and I didn't want to go through that. And I also didn't want to sit there and cry and make you feel bad on your wedding day, and so I just let my kids go. So those are the couple times that it came up in my life. Other than that, that is a door that is shut. I don't want to talk about it. My brothers and sisters knew not. So my little brother talked to me. My sister talked to me some, but we were just kind of distant. My older brother never talked to me at all.
Are they all witnesses?
What's that?
Are all of your siblings still witnesses?
Yes. I have a ex-Bethelite elder brother. He's actually physically close to me. He's only about an hour away in Colorado Springs. I've never met his wife, who's like, they've been married for 25 years. I heard she talks crap about me, which I think is funny. Like,
well,
literally never met you in my life.
Tana, you are the party girl.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm like, okay. Oh yeah, she told somebody too that she didn't agree with my lifestyle. You literally do not know me. You don't know me.
I don't agree with their lifestyle.
Right. And that's the thing too. That part I don't get. So talking to my sister more recently, she was like, I tried to talk to our brothers and tell them, like, your lifestyle isn't that much different than our lifestyle. Like, it's really not. And I tried to tell them that. I mean, except for I don't go to their church. But beyond that, it's, lifestyle wise, like I'm working, I got rescue dogs, got kids, I got a house, like whatever. Like it's not, I got a job, a career. I mean, that part's a little bit different as far as they none of them went to school or anything. They all opened their own businesses and things like that. But she was like, I tried to tell them, that your lifestyle isn't that much different. And she's like, but they still said like they don't want to talk to you and they don't want anything to do with you. And she's like, I'm so sorry. And I was like, dude, it's okay. I was like, it's all right. That's their thing. And I was like, but see how that works? It can be their thing. And I'm okay with that being their thing. They can have their church and I don't judge them for that. But they judge me for not being in their church, like just for not believing the same thing as them. I was like, that's the part that's crazy to me. It's they can believe whatever they want, and I'm okay with that. You can believe whatever you want. I'm okay with that. Mom, dad, anybody, my kids, anybody can believe whatever they want, and I'm okay with that. And she's like, yeah, that really doesn't make sense, Like, I know that the conversation, she's like, yeah, it's not right. But it's only that I don't agree with them.
As you're talking about it, I'm thinking back to the friend that you had who I believe you said she's Black. Your dad had a lot of racist, was racist.
Yeah.
And she said, he treats me well, and so I can't go beyond that. At the same time, you look at your because the fact that your family is racist against you, they're racist against anyone that is not one of Jehovah's Witnesses. It's its
Believe
own racism,
exactly. Yeah,
and it's its own bigotry. And that is
exactly.
what they put out into the world and how they treat people. And it's really, really sad. Um, you know, I respect everybody's right to hold their own beliefs and to go find their own beliefs, but I don't respect people's toxic and hurtful beliefs. I don't
Right.
respect the beliefs. And with Jehovah's Witnesses, these individuals are treating you really terribly. You're still kind enough to say, hey, I respect that you have a right to your beliefs, but the way they treat you is abusive and terrible. And I mean, they're basically being racist towards you in a
Hmm.
way by the way they treat you. It's really discriminatory and oppressive and just awful to treat your own kid, your own sibling, daughter, friend, any other human being that way. We shouldn't treat
Right.
each other that way, especially in the what is it? The Jehovah's Witnesses are like the by their love you will know them. There's no love there.
Yeah.
They love
Yeah.
themselves.
Exactly. Exactly. And they're so wrapped up in their own things, their own beliefs. It's like you can't, I know I've heard you say this before, you can hardly have a conversation about other things,
Oh,
you know? It's just, I mean, if you sit there and you say it out loud, they call it the truth, guys. Come on. Like, this
well,
is very
Anna,
culty
your
language.
dad's not the only, or maybe he's not today. I don't know, but your dad was not the only addict in your home. Your
Right.
mom is addicted to the truth.
Yeah.
That's what she
Absolutely.
thinks about when she lies down and when she gets up, when she walks on the road. And, as
Exactly.
the scripture they used to quote, it's the thing she has to have a fix of at every turn. It's more important than even her children's lives. It is the thing that she would do anything for.
Yeah.
And it rules all.
Right.
Whole life built around being addicted to a belief system,
Right. And
ideology.
I always feel there's always a chance that she'll never talk to me again.
Mhm.
Always. When they start pounding it more, every few years, like they'll start really pounding the shunning more or something because all of a sudden they should has less to do with me and or like my little brother, we talked my whole life my whole life through having my kids, through everything. We talked through everything. He never treated me different until he did. Until he did. Until he got more into it during COVID. He got, like all gung ho, jumped head first in, I guess. I don't know when he became an elder. But at some point he became an elder too. And like I never in 1 million years would have thought that he would have stopped talking to me, especially because he didn't all these years. And then all of a sudden, until he did. And I saw that video on the JW org or whatever, the shunning video,
Uh-huh.
or where they like the daughter calls the mom and the mom looks at her phone and da da da. And then she says, something to the effect of until she comes back to Jehovah, this is the way I can show her my love, blah, blah, blah. And when I watched that video, I was like, ew. And I went back to a text message that my little brother had sent. So this summer, my daughter, who's 26, the one I had when I was 16, she wanted to do family pictures with my 90 something year old grandma, her kid, my daughter's kids, me, my mom, my grandma. So like a 5 generation picture. And she was like, I want to do these family pictures with grandma, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, that sounds great. And then she said, yes, I don't know about so-and-so and so-and-so, you know, they're going to be here. So it'll be weird talking about my brothers. And I was like, hold up. They're in the pictures, in these family pictures? And she's like, yeah, because first of all, we were never really close with them as far as my kids, my family. I let my kids know them and stuff, but as far as like being really close, like family pictures and stuff, I'm like, what? And yeah, so she was going to do these pictures, and she was like, well, you know, I understand how it is with you. Because I'm not going to, I don't tell my kids to disown my brothers or disown anybody else because they disown me. But you do see what they do to me. So it's a little weird. I kind of wish you were on my side. You're my kids. I birthed you. But I feel like you should be on my side a little bit. But I don't want them to choose sides too. I don't. I really don't. But my daughter was like, yeah, so these guys are going to be there. And like I said, his wife, they've been married 25 years. I don't know her. And I'm like, how does that work? You want us in a picture together? I've never said a word to her. I don't know her. She is literally a stranger to me. Mm-hmm. You want us in these pictures? And she was like, well, maybe you could do your pictures with grandma first. And then they could, I was like, you know what? Take your pictures. I'm not doing this. I'm not putting myself in that traumatic situation. You know, she goes, I understand it could be awkward. And I thought, awkward. That is that word just isn't, it's not awkward. It's traumatic. It is trauma to put myself in that situation. I'm not doing it. So I didn't go. And I felt bad. And I saw the pictures and they look great, but I didn't go. And I felt bad for my daughter because she set it up and I wanted to do the pictures with her, but I could not I was like, no, I'm not going to let them think that this is okay.
There's a difference between setting a boundary to protect yourself from people who are unsafe for you and who traumatize you and institutionally for shunning. There's different things there, and those are two separate things. And saying I'm going to set a boundary here because this is traumatic for me, and I'm not going to put myself back in a situation where I'm going to be re-traumatized and hurt again. That's a healthy thing to do, and that's not just saying I shun you because you're Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah, and I felt horrible. I felt bad about doing that, but I knew it was best for me.
I was going to say you were trained to feel bad about doing anything for yourself that protects you.
Yeah.
But
I did feel good about it
after. You have nothing to feel horrible about. Yeah. You did the right thing for yourself.
I felt bad at first, and then I started thinking like, I had to do that for me though. Like I could not. It's a long drive. You want me to drive 6 hours? Let's go do that. Good God. And then drive 6 hours home like that.
Let's put it in any other terms, Tana.
What's that?
Let's say that these people, instead of shunning you and stuff, let's say that they all sexually abused you. Would you be forced? Would it be wrong of you in any way to go say, nah, you know what? Don't want to have my arms around them getting pictures taken because they've abused me my whole life? It's kind of the same thing. It's just in a different type of abuse. It's mental, it's emotional, it's spiritual.
Yeah, literally one of the last times I saw my brother, he was dunking my hand in a piranha tank. Like, I don't want to hang out with him. He's mean.
Not really.
He's still, so I guess, so I've told my sister and stuff, and she's like, I said that to him, and he is like, that was a long time ago. Like, he defends like how abusive he was to me as a kid. Like, well, that was a long time ago. But it's still not cool, bro.
Instead of, yeah, I was kind of messed up and I did something messed up.
Yeah.
That was a long time ago.
And I can do that. I can say we were kids, and I'm sure you weren't actually trying to feed me to a piranha, right? but it was traumatic for me and whatever. And you probably shouldn't have did that, but we were kids. Like I can put it in a way like that, but he gets really defensive, I guess. I don't know because I haven't talked to him in 30 years. But again, he gets really defensive about, oh, I was young. Gets really mad about it. And I'm like,
Well,
that's
Jehovah's
you
Witnesses don't
judging
care
our
about
siblings.
other people's feelings. There's no
Yeah.
empathy. So, I mean, that's how they justify shunning people and all the other horrible things they do, is their empathy is systematically turned off over
Yeah.
time.
There's not
So
much empathy
that's
there
why they're
for anybody.
capable of some pretty awful things, like shunning
Oh,
their own kids.
right.
Um,
Absolutely.
so you've been on this path for quite some time. Um, you say though that it's been recently that you've kind of started to wake up as to the realities of some of this stuff.
Yeah.
What were some of the things that helped you to, not necessarily specific points, I guess, but what were some of the resources or whatever that helped you to start seeing the world a little different, or open your eyes to the fact that this maybe wasn't a very healthy thing?
Yeah. So when my best friend passed away in March, we set up, I was there when she passed away, and then her wife had asked me to help with the arrangements a little bit, and I wanted to be there for her family. I told you I'm really close to her parents, and her brother flew in, and his family and all of that. So I stayed for the arrangements, to make arrangements and stuff, and then of course for the funeral. And I met a lot of her people. So she was into roller derby, and she was really good at roller derby, and that's a whole community in itself. A lot of really fun characters, a lot of cool people. And so I met a lot of them at the funeral. And then, a lot of them were sending me friend requests on social media sites. And so I got this whole new group of friends, right? And she was so awesome. And I'm like, if she was friends with them, they're good people, because she was the best person I know. So one of her friends on social media was like, oh my gosh, I'm doing this new podcast, blah, 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 kind of about me growing up, but we talk about everything and whatever. And it was her derby name was Deb Crush, like Crusher, or, Crush. And the name of her podcast was Crushing Culture, and Crush and Cult were in a slightly shaded font or something. And I was like, huh. And I thought, well, I wonder what she's talking about. She's cool, and she made these cool shirts and all this stuff. She was doing a lot of stuff fundraising, because my friend died of breast cancer. So we did a lot. A lot of her friends did fundraising stuff to help with medical bills and t-shirts and all this stuff. And she was one of those people. So anyways, I was like, let me check out her podcast. Well, then I went down this rabbit hole because I listened to her podcast. The first episode was probably an hour and a half long. And she talks about how she was raised in this cult, but she doesn't name it. That's the key to where I was like, huh. She doesn't name the cult. She just calls it Church X. But she's talking about how she was raised. And I'm like, this is all sounding really familiar. Like a lot of the stuff she was saying, I was like, huh. I wonder if she was a Jehovah's Witness, because this is really sounding a lot like our stuff, And I'm listening and I'm listening. I'm like, she a Jehovah's Witness? It's Jehovah's Witness. It's a cult? This is all just, I'm like, I mean, I have always called it extreme. Always called it extreme. I have said culty. The culty I used as an adjective, I guess, to describe it. But she kept calling it Church X. Well, then she was dropping these hints. She's like, you might be able to figure it out, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, mission accepted, challenge accepted. I'm going to figure out what cult she was in, right? So I'm listening for her clues and stuff. And then I'm typing and researching and looking at, she was in upstate New York, in Syracuse. So I'm like, okay, upstate New York, cults in upstate New York. She gave some other clues about it. And I'm like, so I'm Googling, and it said, one of my searches came up with the top 3 cults in upstate New York. Jehovah's Witnesses is in that list of top 3. And I'm like, oh, okay, so this website is calling it a cult. Okay. So I start looking at stuff. I see the bite model. I'm like, oh, yeah, kind of, like going through all the points, like
Mhm.
sort of, yeah, and I'm like, wow, it really was a cult. So I never did find out what cult my friend was raised in, because then I went down a whole nother rabbit hole, looking into Jehovah's Witnesses, and I found the first podcast I listened to, was Nobody Asked Us to Do This,
Mhm.
an ex-JW story. And I liked that. And I liked it wasn't really attacking the Jehovah's Witnesses. Because again, in my mind, you if they're attacking it, then they're evil. Or yeah, I don't know. I don't know. In my
We're taught to
40s.
defend our abusers, yes.
Yeah, in my 40s, I'm like, I don't understand why I thought
Mhm.
that. But so I listened to that one. Then this JW Live,
Mhm.
listen to that. Then I've listened to every episode of Shunned, I think.
It's a lot.
All of your interviews I thought were so cool. And that was really just helpful. Just hearing people's like other experiences too was really, really helpful in all of it. Which other ones? Critical thinkers.
Mhm.
Um, what else? I have a list. I wrote down more.
Oh, I mean, there's a million of us out here. There's
Yeah.
a
Oh,
whole
and I
lot.
bought Crisis of Conscience.
Sure.
I did read that.
Mhm.
But yeah, just mostly just like podcasts and all of this. But yeah, it all started on a rabbit hole from my friend saying, "Hey, check out my podcast." I'm like, I'm going to support her. And then I'm
Cool.
like, oh. So that was in
Oh,
March,
that's me.
from March to now.
Yes. It's just funny to see, sometimes it's something unrelated or someone else's story, or you just never know what it is that might make you look at your own life a little bit differently. Is there anything that you would say to anybody who shuns you today?
Mm, if anything, probably just it's a shame that you never actually got to know me, my kids, my family, for us. You never
Mhm.
got to know us as people before you made these decisions. It's just a shame.
Yeah, it really is. They end up missing out on the best of us as we become healthy people
Right.
and leave that mess behind. Um, so what about so you said, they didn't get to know us. So what is us today? What do you enjoy about your life after Jehovah's Witnesses? What do you enjoy about your life today? What are you proud of or enjoying?
All of it. My kids are awesome. They got to do all the sports. They're super athletic. They got to do all the sports in school, and we had so much fun with that. And I, you know, was wished I had been able to do any of that stuff, but it was really fun letting them do it and watching them do it and being there for them to do it and let them make other mistakes in school or with friends or whatever, but like they got to do all of that. And yeah, so super proud of my kids, proud of I got 2 degrees. I have a good job. I love my job. Um, my husband and he has a great job. We just recently bought a house here in Denver. I love our house in our neighborhood. We got some rescue dogs. They're pretty cool. I can hear them. They're walking around over here now, wondering what I'm doing. Um, but yeah, we just live life and have fun and experience the things like I said, like the kids' sports and all the things. Like it was just fun, and we get to just go do what we want to do, or we don't have to think about, is this bad? Everything was bad. I remember everything was bad. And I remember my little brother would always say it, and one of our friends' little sisters would always say, that's bad. That's bad. Everything. Christmas, that's bad. This music is bad. Everything was bad. And nothing is, I mean, there's things that are bad, obviously. But as far as like most things in life, you get to just like enjoy them, and then or try them and then see if you enjoy them, or if it's not your thing or whatever. But it's not like cannot think about doing it because it's bad. I like to
And
live.
now look, you've gone from a life where that's bad, everything's bad, to a life where it sounds like a good life.
Yeah.
You've created a good life for yourself, for your kids, your husband, your dogs,
Yeah.
the people that you probably work with in your profession.
Yeah.
That's all. Those are all beautiful things to come from, a start that necessarily wasn't necessarily the best, and you've been able to create a lot out of it, and that speaks to you, and that speaks to some of the support you've had around you and the good people. I think the person you're going to call when we get off this call,
Yeah.
it speaks to a lot of different things, and I'm so glad that you've been able to make something out of all of that, and to have a life that you really love and enjoy for yourself and for the people that you love. That's really all you can ask out of life, isn't it?
Yeah. And I've heard, seen stories of people that are chemo, and I'm like, wow, that's got to be horrible,
Mhm. There
to,
aren't many lives attached to Jehovah's Witnesses that are anything but that.
yeah. And I'm just like, man, you know, when it all happened, it didn't feel like it was a fun, good thing happening to me, right?
Mhm.
But I am so grateful that it happened so young in life, that I didn't waste more time with it, that I got to do stuff that I wanted to do. Yeah, I made mistakes and stuff, but I also learned from those mistakes and moved on and got degrees and did, moved out of state. That was probably one of the best things ever, was moving out of state and getting away from all that toxicity and being able to physically remove myself from even being in that town and hearing things and all of that. It awesome. It was awesome.
Oh, distance from toxic environments is always a good thing. And so
Yeah.
I'm glad that you found it. Whether it's physically moving, to be quite honest, whether it's being shunned, and if we can see how toxic the people that we were once around are, there's distance that comes from shunning. And while shunning is
Mhm.
not certainly not something that I would advocate for, it's not everything has a yin and a yang, a good and a bad. And the good part of shunning is that it keeps toxic people away. And
Right. Right.
it's its own boundary of sorts. And so I not that it's the one that you're setting out to obtain, but it is something that can provide its own level of protection, not for Jehovah's Witnesses like they say. It can provide it for us, actually,
Right.
because you can't be healthy and be in a cult. So
Right.
I'm glad that you've found other things in life and some healthy things. And I appreciate you sharing your story today.
Thank you. I appreciate you letting me tell my story. And honestly, just that you have this platform, I think is awesome, because just listening to other people's stories, I was like, yeah, no, I mean, I'm kind of a weirdo, but I'm not like a total weird. Like, this happened to other people. Like other people have been through this, like, and have different experiences, but still at least understand part of my experiences. I don't know. That's so eye opening to me. Just in the change I feel in myself in the last 6 8 months. It's been awesome. Really.
Oh,
It feels really freeing. I always felt like I wasn't good enough. And now I'm like, no, I was really smart. I really thought that this was really weird, crazy
well,
from the
I think
beginning.
that's a
Like,
good place. I think that's the place to end.
yeah,
You've gone from a place where you you thought that there was something wrong with you to where you're realizing that there was something wrong with all of that. And
yeah,
and and then you telling your story today, now you're going to help others to see this too. You now get
I
to
love
add
it.
your story to the tapestry, and other people will be able to hear it.
I think that's so cool. Thank you.